Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to call today's meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. I would like to confirm that we do have quorum and that I also have the CAO clerk and other members of the senior management team here and present today. I would like to advise that and continue to advise the public that you can send comments to the following email address, tmlpubliccomment@muskokalakes.ca. At this point, we did not receive any. I would also remind us that today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. We did receive a supplementary agenda. There was 2 items. 6A, public comment letter was received on the facility fee review. And 8A, under corporate services, we received a report on the original road allowance application. At this point, I would like to ask committee if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Councillor Boseworth?
And the community grant program.
Okay.
Director.
Okay.
And I have sent my form.
Showing off already, I see. Thank you for doing that. I see other hands up today. Councillor McIntyre.
Good morning. I have a conflict of pecuniary interest in number 10B, Muskoka Lakes Community Fund Project.
Okay.
I'm the employee of Muskoka Community Foundation.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Okay, seeing none. I will now open up the floor to, we have one invited delegation today, or a delegation today, item 5A. Mr. Bender, I believe you are coming to the podium, so please, we will pull up your presentation. You have 5 minutes, and I just want to make sure if somebody can just that the microphone is on. Okay, you just have to turn that on this side.
The green light says it's on.
Excellent. Okay, so with that, we will turn the floor over to you. And just as a reminder, just because there's a few of you in the audience today, what will happen is Mr. Bender will do his presentation. I will open up the floor to committee for questions. And then you'll note later on in the agenda, we have this item up for discussion. So committee will not be discussing the content or the next steps until later in the agenda, but we will open up the floor for questions after. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you.
Great, thanks. Dean Bender, and I'm here to represent the cohort of the residents at Windermere. The first thing I wanted to say was that everybody in Windermere loved deer. You know, it contributes to the community. It's idyllic. Seeing a mother and 2 fawns bounce across the 18th fairway, there's something special about that. We also know that it's, however, a delicate balance between human and deer. We also know that we're visitors in their territory. But that imbalance has shifted towards the deer, and we believe we know why. You can go to the next page, please. You know, the immediate radius of Windermere is about just under 1 square kilometer, and typically in the wild, 3 to 10 deer live per kilometer. We have 40 in that 1 kilometer in the town right now, and the residents behind me and ourselves and the 30 that have signed the petition have been there for, I wouldn't even want to guess how many collective years we've been there. It has never, ever been a problem, except over the last 3 years. And once again, we believe we know why. Next page, please. It's like clockwork. They all come in to be fed. Their habitual feeding has been changed. They're no longer out in the bush. They are coming into town and they wait to be fed. And we can see the whole family, mothers, bucks, does, and the fawn as well. Next page, please. I won't go through this, but obviously there's impacts on wildlife health, malnutrition. We can see the babies right now. Because they're being fed, guess who gets fed first? The bucks. They push the babies out, and we can see the babies right now. They are malnutrition. They're not eating, and they're weak. The big one for us right now is disease transmission. The deer are now bedding in our gardens. They're defecating on our lawns. We have children. We have a brand new playground, and we really fear the ticks. Also in the golf course as well as you go in. So that's a big one. Obviously, public safety, road, and environmental and ecological damage. If you want to go to the next page, please. Significant loss of vegetation and species that are just gone now. I think I alone keep Windermere Gardens afloat with how much money I spend there. And I have spent over $15,000 on trees. I just can't keep any sort of tree other than a birch alive in its grasses. Everything else gets eaten. It goes to Windermere House, it goes to the golf course, and it goes all around town. Next page, please. I put this in because this just makes sense. It's common sense. You don't feed the natural wildlife because it takes an effect all the way down. So the point was that not everyone in the village has this common sense and abides by this. Next page, please. Here's a list of the 30 people who signed the petition. Our concerns, as I said, ticks, safety, deer on the road, as we have mentioned previously, wolves that you never saw in town before now know where their dinner is. It's in town. So now the wolves are coming in, and now we all have dogs, and now are they at risk? And lastly, environment. As I said, personally, it's not about that, but at the same time, you can't have a nice property. And I myself, along with our neighbor who has put in over 40 trees, of which half of them were eaten, the golf course puts in trees. They're all eaten, right down to potted plants and everything else. So that's another big concern. Next page, please. So our proposed solution is an introduction of a bylaw prohibiting the feeding of wildlife within a 1 kilometer radius of the village that includes both deer and ducks. There's a duck problem as well because someone feeds them. An amount that is significantly higher than the $200 enforced in Bracebridge, and consistent monitoring of village by bylaw officers for enforcement. I know, right, it's been shared with me, and I absolutely understand that the list of bylaws is quite lengthy. So enforcement is very tough. But at the same time, we can identify and help show you exactly where the problem is in town. So it would be a very quick trip. We can tell you exactly when it happens, and it would not be a great deal of time for the bylaw officer to see how many deer are there and when they're there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right on track too, Mr. Bender. That was impressive. Thank you. Committee, at this point, I'll open up the floor for questions. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. It's for you. Thanks, Dean, for your presentation. I guess a couple of questions I would have. First of all, is this seasonal, or is this a year-round experience now?
It is year-round. It is year-round because, like, deer now, I arrive and they are bedded off my deck with no fear.
So where's the food source? Do we know what the food source is?
Yes, there's three residents who consider the deer God's creatures, and they habitually put food out for the deer.
And they're not here. Sorry.
So just
Sorry,
through me. Yeah. One more question.
If I might supplemental, so they're not here representing themselves or their interests.
That is fair. Had we offered them the, May Susan?
Yes. Yes.
We've offered them the opportunity to.
They know perfectly well how we feel.
So just speak right into the mic, please, Cecil.
Sorry. They know perfectly well how we feel. We've talked to them about it. We've begged them to stop feeding them, and they to no avail. One of the three has said if we bring a bylaw in, they'll stop feeding them. But the other, they just feel that they know better than all. basically. And we know exactly who it is. They live right beside each other, right in the center of the village. And the deer, they used to leave the village in the summertime. They would, as soon as the spring came, they were gone, and they came back when the snow came. So, but they never leave anymore because they're fed. There's generations now that have no idea about the natural way of things.
Thank you. Committee, more questions? Councillor Roberts and then Councillor Bosenworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one question for Director Donaldson. And then maybe a couple for the presenter. Director Donaldson, would you please remind myself and committee what the cost increase would be to the tax levy per percentage-wise if we were to dedicate one bylaw officer to Windermere? Per thousand, so clear, I guess my understanding is for every $100,000 that we raise our budget, there's a 1% direct hit on everyone's levy. Is that correct?
So through you, Chair. So the levy this year is around $19 million. So 1% is about 190,000. And I would guess it would depend on the salary of said employee, but 100,000 would probably be in a range of 0.5% on total levy.
Okay, thank you. Just to supplement on that, that would be the salary, but then there would be the vehicle. Correct, on top of that and other expenses. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have another question?
Yes, I had
Okay.
one now to the delegate.
Okay, thank you.
So that in your presentation, I recognize it's a big problem. It is all over our township. You're suggesting that we dedicate a staff bylaw to the area. Is that correct?
We're asking for a bylaw, not a dedicated officer, just a bylaw so it is on record. And so, I was on the website and basically you're asking the people to self-govern. There's education on there on what happens to deer. But the fact is, the common sense slide, they're not self-governing, or 96% of the village are self-governing, but 3 aren't. And so that's the problem that we're having. And so it's just in passing a bylaw that could be enforced. I get it. There's a lot of bylaws to enforce, but at least it's there. And it is now a consequence, because right now there's no consequence.
Okay.
Thank you. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bosenworth and then Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you. The deer have become very accustomed to being fed there, and by your description there, they feed months of the year. I know you may not be a wildlife expert, but how do you rewild this population of deer?
Oh, it's become habitual. And I guess our only hope, there's a very drastic solution, which I believe happened on Tobin's Island once. And I think the village would be supportive of that to reset. But that's not what we're asking right now, but that would be ideal. And I'm not even sure that's within your right. I actually had an hour-long conversation with someone at the Ministry of Natural Resources. And right now, all they can do is increase the tags, which is a result of hunters filling out a survey that there's more deer this year than there were last year. So they issue more tags. I'm not sure how you get to the drastic measures of a cull, but we felt the first thing we can do is come to you. It's a much slower process. You stop the feeding, a year, 2 years, 3 years, they eventually go away. I don't know. I would hope it would be a year, but I can't imagine that would be the case.
Thank you. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you very much, and through you. First, to comment on that last question, I visited and saw many deer that were physically challenged. They'd been hit by cars but had healed. If they weren't being fed domestically and were left to the wild, they wouldn't be around long. That's number one. But, I have really two challenges, and you hit one of them squarely, and that is I never like contemplating or passing bylaws that I don't really have a lot of faith we would ever be able to catch people in the act and stop them. We'll deal with that, and we'll talk about that when it comes to the debate. But I'm also going to ask you, just based on what you've read and seen, is there a way to selectively stop feeding ducks and deer that don't also capture songbirds and other animals that we would like to keep feeding, presumably through tough winter months? I just don't know. I think they eat the same thing.
Well, the ducks feed off the ground. Songbirds will feed off a feeder hung. So that's the same one person feeds both ducks and deer, which then go into the pond at the Baldwins, which then the algae increases, which then goes through our property, which then goes into the lake. And I would say outside of the culvert, there is a 15-foot catchment of algae now because the amount of ducks in that pond. Ducks feed off the ground, the deer feed off the ground. The person who does that feeding also hangs some bird feeders, but that's not a problem. Like you said, they can fly to that, and the squirrels, I guess.
Okay. Supplemental?
Yeah, thank you, and through you. I'm actually, in my experience, having hung bird feeders. When the snow gets to a certain depth, the deer just knock all the food on the ground and eat it. So we're indirectly feeding the deer. They're eating the same kind of seed and the same kind of stuff so I'm just trying to figure out how you can sort of discreetly draw circles around two species without impacting all of them. And maybe we don't care if we impact all of them. I don't know, but it just seems to me that songbirds are somewhat in a different class. People always like to see the cardinals and blue jays
Yeah, well,
I was
Ms.
subtle.
Kinsella, would you like to come to the podium?
I feed the birds.
So-
I have a bird feeder. It is squirrel proof. The deer do not come near it. They don't knock it down. It hangs from the rafters. It's probably too high, but probably not. It's pretty creative. Therefore, one has nothing to do with the other. It really doesn't. I mean, you have two little sprinklings on the ground because the birds spit them out. That'll be a squirrel. It won't be a deer. And they sleep in my yard, so I watch them carefully, these deer. Thank you.
Thank you.
and further that back to the aggressiveness of the deer, the money spent on through the winter burlapping, fencing. Yeah, they just come in, they knock it down, they'll rip the burlap off to get at the food, or at the trees.
Thank you. This appears to be sparking some more questions. So
Yeah.
Councillor Bosemarth and then Councillor Zavitz, did I see your hand up again?
Please.
Okay, Councillor Bosemarth, again, we're just in questions, right? Okay.
No, I understand. What is being fed to the deer?
I know, I do not know. I know that Home Hardware sells deer
It's-
pellets, so that's available. I'm not sure. Do you know what there's being fed?
I'm sure.
Sorry, guys, one person, just because we have people watching online, so just come to the podium, please, and speak to them. And
He just said it.
Okay, just speak through the mic though, so people,
Sells bags,
okay,
which I think should be against the law, personally, but.
okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. A delegate question. I guess my bigger thought is, on what percentage of the property of Windermere is this? Is this mainly on township property, or is this at the Windermere house and at your house and everybody else's house? Or, I'm just trying to get a sense of, for example, in Torrance, and who doesn't have a beaver issue? And the cottagers in Torrance all got together, put money in a pot, got a trapper through our township and are dealing with the long-term issue of, because it's not on our property. What do you think of that? What can you speak to?
Well, I would say that it's 90% residential or owned. There's not, there's the little town's hall there that has a potted plant. There's the new children's playground, which would be on public property. there's potted plants by the wharf. There's just not much public property there for trees and vegetation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, committee? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming in today on a nice rainy day here in Port Carling. And as noted, we will talk about this a little bit further in today's agenda, and you don't need to stay around unless you feel like you would like to stay around to listen to the rest of today's meeting. That said, somebody from staff will follow up and let you know what the next steps are coming out of today's discussion. Okay?
Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, committee, we are now working on item 8A. This story.
Right. Thank you, Chair Mazan, and good morning, committee. The report before you is regarding an application received from an abutting landowner looking to purchase a portion of township road allowance in order to correct encroachments located on township lands. Staff have reviewed the application and are recommending approval subject to the conditions noted in the staff report. And with that said, I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions before I read the resolution? Okay, seeing none. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that original road allowance application ORA-01-26 2352175 Ontario Inc. be approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, that a satisfactory corresponding draft numbered reference plan of survey be prepared and provided to the clerk for review within 1 year of the date of this conditional approval. 2, that the township be in receipt of the following from the acting solicitor. 1, confirmation that public notice of the proposed disposition was published pursuant to Township Policy C-LS 06. And 2, confirmation from applicable agencies that they have no concerns with the proposed disposition. And 3, a road closing bylaw, a declaration of surplus resolution, and any related necessary documentation to effect the disposition. 4, I think, payment of any applicable fees for the land costs, solicitor time, and disbursements, as well as confirmation applicable property taxes have been paid up to date. Committee, are there any further questions and or comments? Councillor Boseworth.
Thank you. One of our constituents has pointed out that sometimes when we sell property to when we sell township land to a property owner, it has quite a very significant impact on the value of that property, and suggested that perhaps we should give some strong consideration to a different form of pricing I would say a different form of pricing when the road allowance is not across the front of a property, but in parallel to the property. And I think not for this, I just think it's something that this council should consider at some point, because I think there is some value to this.
Okay, and the fact that you just noted that has nothing to do with this particular resolution that's in front of us, but
Correct.
if there's an appetite to better understand future.
Exactly.
Mayor Kelly, do you have a comment on this resolution or?
Thank you. And through you, I actually have a comment on Councillor Boseworth's suggestion, and that was that I was going to try to introduce that letter tomorrow this afternoon on council.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like there's a path for it then. Thank you. Councillor Burry.
Thank you. And I would both encourage the mayor and Councillor Boseworth to go on that pricing. My issue is a little different. It's when we take in revenue from this kind of transaction, I'd really like to see us set up something that in the way of an endowment.
This is all great conversation, but it has nothing to do with this particular resolution in front of us.
If we're taking any money in, what I'd really like to see us have, and maybe it's not for, it is for today. Where's the money going? Will be my question. If we sell this, where does the money go?
So is that a discussion that we can have later in today's agenda? I don't know.
So I'd just like to frame this. The city of Toronto many years ago decided that selling excess property shouldn't be a boondoggle for the current operating budget. So how do we take an asset which is permanent? My apologies. How do we take an asset which is permanent, land, and make it more permanent? So take the revenue from that and put it into an endowment that we can use in perpetuity for other kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. I hear your question. I want to try and remind us, we have a big agenda today, and I'm trying to keep us focused on the resolution in front of us. I am because of the, Councillor Burry. I am going to ask Director Donaldson to respond either now and or later when you are actually going through your reports to the specific question. Would you prefer to do this now or to wait?
Through you, Chair, I can give a quick
Okay.
answer right now. So historically, when we've sold road allowance and shore road allowance money, that has been brought into the operating budget. I see it as one-time revenue, and one-time revenue is not sustainable, and we shouldn't be supporting operating expenses through that. So we don't set up an endowment currently, but we are in the process of migrating, because I didn't want to do it all in one year because it'd be a huge impact to the tax rate. But we are migrating ourselves within the next couple of years so that all sale of shore road allowance funds would be treated the same as property, would be transferred to a capital reserve, which would then be used to reinvest in new assets. So that's currently where the township is on the proceeds from the sale.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to draw our attention back to the resolution I read about this particular road allowance. Are there any further questions or comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Ms. Jeffries, welcome to the podium. Item 8B.
This staff report is related to the preliminary results of the 2025 year end. The final numbers that will appear in the audited financial statements may change as we progress through the external audit. As you've heard in previous reports, the weather event and the delay in the short-term rental program are the main contributing factors to the deficit of $783,000 showing in this report. But if we step back and look at the year-end results and remove some of the extraordinary items, the ice storm, the deficit to the short-term rentals, and the WSIB surplus, the deficit number would be $25,000. Yes, and the items still exist, but it gives a perspective on how much those extraordinary items impacted the year-end. Winter control also has an impact, but it's not as easy to quantify the impact as on any specific snowfall, as we had a number of larger than normal snowfalls during the year. Winter control ended the year at $465,000 over budget. This is the most winter control has been over budget in a 5-year time span. In 2024, it was over approximately $120,000, but in 2020, it was under budget by $351,000, and the other years fall in between those two numbers. Other items impacting the year-end results are building repairs, hydro, fuel for vehicles, legal fees that came in higher than budget, but these are offset by salaries and benefits being lower than budget due to vacancies and timing of replacement staff, as well as timing of new positions being filled. Also, some of the revenue items such as fines, permit, interest revenue, ice fee rentals, and false alarms came in over budget. For building maintenance, the items identified in the resolution contributed to the deficit in this area, but they were also impacted by snow removal at the arenas and community centers and various other repairs and maintenance. Hydro is primarily over budget in the arenas and community centers. Legal fees is primarily over budget in building, bylaw, and legislative services. For capital, Appendix 3 shows all capital items that had spending in 2025 and their life-to-date spend. Projects that show open are expected to have additional expenses applied in future periods. And once this cost is realized, the reserve balance noted in Table 2 will be lower by approximately $5.4 million. It is normal to have some projects carry forward year over year, and how much is carried forward depends on the projects undertaken in any specific year. In 2025, there are several projects contributing to a larger carry forward amount, and they are 2 tandem trucks that were committed to but not shipped at year end, the Windermere Wharf, the Burgess Dam, and the remaining portion of various road projects and Gross Road Culvert. For the Parks Reserve, the 2025 budget document, there was a proposed reallocation of funds that was not brought forward to council during the year. And the 425 in the proposed resolution at this time suggests a transfer for the spend that occurred in 2025, but not the full proposed amount in the 2025 budget, as not all projects in 2025 have been completed to date, and some of them came in under budget. So if you have any questions.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for a good comprehensive report. We appreciate that. And at this point, I will open up the floor to committee. I do have a resolution for questions. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you, and it was an excellent report. I just want to confirm, basically for the record, the three matters that for which we're proposing the creation of capital project file. The money's been spent and okay, that's fine. And the reason is that I potentially would have a conflict I believe that I would need to consider, but for the fact that the work's done and the money's spent. Thank you.
Yeah, through you. Yes, the money has been spent and it's more of a housekeeping item.
Housekeeping. Okay, at this point, thank you. Councillor Bosworth, question?
Yes, thank you. When we go through the operating expense, it's very easy to understand whether we are above or below budget. It seems to be a little more nuanced in the capital side. And because we move budgets around, is there a way for us to know and say, you know, we approved a capital plan of 13 million, something like that. Are we over and under? How much are we over or under on that?
Thank you.
Through you. Yes, we track any of the changes. Like if council approves any additional funds, we track that. And we are working on a process for any allocation of funds from a director level. So we do know what we are over and under in a year.
Okay, supplemental?
And so how much are we over or under for 25?
Director Donaldson, do you have that? I don't have it off the top of my head.
Sure. So through you, Chair. So in Appendix 3 to the report, so we're showing the amended or revised budget was 14.2 million. And in the year, we spent nearly 8.5 towards those projects. But as the Deputy Treasurer noted, a number of those projects are still open. So the potential additional spend on those would be about 5.4. If we hit budget on all of those, we'd be about 300,000 under budget on our total capital for 2025.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz, questions?
Thank you. And through you to the presenter, it fools errand to check your work after the year is done. But I can say that one of the things that I noticed, and this is just a fireside chat, I guess, is
So do you want me to read the resolution?
question. Well,
Because
the question would be, if you don't mind.
Yeah, question is fine.
Question.
You framed it as a fireside.
There seems to be quite a few if you will, overages or underages that are 100,000 or more. Like these are like bite-sized chunks. And when you start to look at them all, you get to $1 million pretty quick. And when you only have 15 million to spend, it makes me wonder a little bit about the budgeting process itself. And I'm not being critical of staff whatsoever, but
So is there a question? Councillor Zavitz?
Is there a way to have some sort of a more fulsome budgeting process where there are some checks and balances in there that might catch some of this, so that at the end of the year, it doesn't look like we're out 2.1 million or 1.2. So to your point, is there something of that we could do in the budgeting process that might nip some of this in the bud?
Ms. Jeffries, would you like to handle that, or Director Donaldson?
Director Donaldson does
Okay.
most of the budgeting process.
Yes.
So through you, Chair. So great question, great observation. The shortcoming in budgeting is it's done based on the best information that's available at the time that you're doing it. And a lot of the time that we see overages, and the Deputy Treasurer spoke to winter control. We do estimates on what we think average snowfalls have been and how much they'll affect the budget. But when it comes, and we have to respond in accordance. And we record it on in the buckets that it would be attributed to. So we're going to see overages and underspending from time to time. Salaries and wages would be another one. You know, we budget for a full staff complement for the entire year. Inevitably, we have vacancies. We do put in a provision against that. But again, the number of days staffed will be what they are. I think that we continue to develop the budget process and look at past year's results and try to figure out what are recurring and what are one time, and try to kind of smooth those out and figure out where we can improve on our estimates. But again, it's not a perfect science. The one advantage of budgeting is you can make the numbers anything you want them to be, but the actuals are always the actuals. So we try to continue to evolve and improve our budgeting estimate process.
Yep, thank you. I just want to see if anybody else has a question before I go back to Councillor Bosenworth. Councillor Nishikawa, do you have a question? And then I can.
I would like to hear, and then I have a question.
Okay, Councillor Bosenworth.
There is a lovely expression that captures the vagaries of planning. Man plans, God laughs.
That was not a
Man
question.
plans,
Yeah.
God laughs.
Okay. Councillor Nishikawa, do you have a question?
Sorry, I was really hoping for a good question. So thank you through you to Director Donaldson, and I know I might be off topic a little bit, but I'm wanting to be reminded of our purchasing ability for hydro, for instance. And it's mostly because I read a report from another municipality of their buying in bulk. And I'm just not sure where we stand with that sort of thing.
Okay, Director Donaldson.
So through you, Chair. So we do have a purchase contract through AMO, the local LAS is the acronym, and I can't remember what it stands for, but we do have and it's basically one of those arrangements where you have a fixed price. So as the market goes up and down, you know exactly what your costs are going to be. And I think that attributes for 75% of our hydro costs. The other 25% is subject to volatility in the market. So we do try to secure ourselves on the cost side. The consumption side is always where the variable will be in terms of how much usage we have versus how much usage we expect we're going to have. So, and in particular usage on hydro is, I think in the arenas consume a lot of the power that's shown in the hydro and utilities budget. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Supplemental?
Thank you. So again, through my reading, I'm aware that there's now new solar projects available. And I don't remember if you can remind me of when we ever looked at solar or bringing solar into our municipality.
Director Donaldson or Director Clucci?
So through you, Chair, I'll defer this one to the Director of Operations. He's responsible for the facilities and how they're powered. So
okay, Director Clucci.
And through you, so recently we haven't looked at solar just for the reason that there hasn't been any incentives. With incentives, we might be able to look at it. As you know, our capital program, we do have some HVAC and heating upgrades in some of our community centers. So what we're going to look at is heat pumps and those type of more environmentally friendly programs. And we could look at solar at that time if there are incentives, because I think right now without incentives, it wouldn't make sense to put solar in.
Okay, thank you. Let me read the resolution. You didn't have your hand up. No, okay. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that Council, authorize the creation of the following capital projects for 2025. 1, purchase of a replacement fridge for the Port Carling Community Centre for $7,100. 2, locks for the Port Carling Library for $9,800. 3, driveway repairs for the Port Carling Arena for $13,500. And 4, communication radios for fire for $32,200. And that Council authorize the transfer of $30,400 from the Building and Facilities Reserve Fund and $32,200 from the Fire Reserve Fund to fund these projects. And that Council authorize the transfer of $425,000 from the Tax Stabilization Reserve to the Parks, Recreation and Trails Reserve to bring the Parks Reserve Fund back to a positive balance. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you very much, and thank you very much for a very comprehensive report for us today. Director Donaldson, I believe this is now you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So I'm presenting this report for informational purposes to provide a consolidated update on committee's past ask for changes to the reserve policy, an update on the 10-year forecast for reserve funds, and a summary of how the capital outlook has evolved over time, and including its current status and future financing in the context of the 2026 budget. So if we can flip ahead 2 slides. Yep, great, thank you. So earlier in this council term, staff were asked to develop an updated reserve policy to guide decisions about how much capital funding should be allocated to reserves in the annual budget. And this would replace the current approach, which where contributions are often made on an ad hoc basis and are heavily influenced by the impact that they have on the tax rate. In response to that request for a formula-based policy, staff initially recommended delaying that update until the capital outlook was more complete, as several key elements had not yet been finalized. So last year, staff presented a report outlining a sinking fund approach to capital funding, just for illustration, and based on the 2025 10-year capital outlook. That report was based on. And since then, there have been updates to the 10-year plan, including shifting a year to include 2035, and incorporating some asset changes or some project changes related to asset conditions and service levels. And now we are at a point where the average annual capital requirement is approximately $16 million in 2026 dollars. So in current year dollars, our trajectory is to spend about $16 million per year on average. So based on the projected levy contributions for capital, reserve funds are expected to be depleted in the next few years. And as a result, debt financing is practically assured for major projects, particularly as we embark on repairs to the arenas in the near future. And staff are considering whether the policy update should now just focus more on establishing prescribed and minimum reserve balances for emergencies, instead of focusing on a formula to determine what that annual contribution should be. But in the end, whatever the updated policy looks like, it should help balance today's affordability with tomorrow's financial obligations. Next slide. So this unscaled chart illustrates the factors that have led to the increase in the 10-year capital outlook, which was $51 million in 2019. And today is 197. Apologize for the correction in this slide. It is $197.5 million in 2026. So the current 10-year outlook is presented in nominal dollars, just to remind everyone, and incorporates a 4.5% annual inflation index to current cost estimates. A significant portion of this increase over the last 7 years has occurred related to the release of the asset management plan, which established a very comprehensive inventory of all township assets and the projected timelines for their replacement. The COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact on costs as material costs rose sharply and have remained elevated. In addition, the outlook now includes projects identified through the fire station location study and the Parks and Trail master plans, along with higher service level expectations as outlined in the level of service study from last year. However, the $197.5 million does not yet include all impacts of approved plans, and we'll discuss that later in the presentation. Next slide. So all else being equal, the cost increases highlighted are examined in greater detail here. Roads and bridges represents the largest capital investment in our 10-year outlook. And these charts compare the cost per kilometer for gravel resurfacing, slurry seal, and surface treatment between 2019 and 2026, helping to explain part of the increase in our 10-year capital outlook. In addition to material cost increases, some of the cost differences are due to the changes in how work is actually carried out now, with a stronger focus on improving road resilience to the impacts of climate change. Next slide. But recent and ongoing investments have already begun to drive visible progress and strengthen our overall community satisfaction. These improvements are essential infrastructure, or to essential infrastructure, such as our roads, equipment for snow removal and fire response, and public spaces like our parks, are enhancing daily life. As these projects take shape, residents can clearly see the positive changes happening around them, fostering a growth of confidence in their community. Next slide. So committee will be very familiar with this chart. The 2024 asset management plan indicated that $18.5 million per year in 2023 dollars was required to stem the increase in overdue work that we call backlog. As noted earlier, the current 10-year plan is calling for annual spending of $16 million. So we're still not to the $18.5 million noted in this chart. In 2024, it was identified that the level of funding at that time was not sufficient. And although the gap has been reduced, additional work is still required. The updated asset management plan is to be completed according to the provincial regulations in 2029. Next slide. So in June 2025, committee reviewed this chart as part of the asset level of service study. The projected 10-year outlook increased to $163 million at that time. And these charts indicate that debt would be required by 2027 as reserves would be reduced to their minimum levels. And it also projected that the total tax levy, both operating and capital, would increase to $37.4 million by 2035. And again, just a reminder, we're just under 20 million now, we're about 19.3 million today. Based on an estimated annual growth, population growth of 1.26%, this would result in a tax rate in 2035 of about $304.09 per $100,000 of assessment. And that's assuming we are continuing to use the 2016 valuation for property. Next slide. So the challenges of an infrastructure gap is not unique to the Township of Muskoka Lakes. Municipalities across Ontario, large urban centers, small rural communities, north, south, they're all facing the same problems. Many are currently dealing with the growing demand of modern approaches to asset management, requires them to carefully maintain, replace, upgrade aging infrastructure. And at the same time, all are struggling to identify sufficient and sustainable sources of revenue to cover these funding shortfalls. And as a result, all communities across the province are being forced to make difficult decisions to address these long-term infrastructure needs. Next slide. So the same model we used for the level of service has been updated now for the 10-year capital outlook. So this is the 10-year outlook that was in the 2026 budget. The overall tax levy in 2035 remains targeted at $37.4 million. And this is based on $19.4 million for for capital, and $18 million would be for operating. So that would be the split of that 37.4 in 2035, roughly a 50-50 split between capital and operating. And that's assuming on the operating side that we're going to see an average 2.3% cost increase on the operating side. The plan requires more than $26 million in debt financing to execute on the plan, and annual debt servicing costs starting in 2036 would be in excess of $2 million per year. A key difference between what we saw in the level of service study version of this plan and the current one is with respect to the area chart at the bottom, which represents these reserve level balances. We would be really hovering just around emergency levels of reserves. This chart shows us to be around $2 million, and that represents the average of the excuse me, that is the 2 million is an average amount based on our average needs for the capital. I'll go back and check the formula, but it's around $2 million for that. On this plan, we would see a tax rate increase on average between $12 and $13 per year over all 10 years. And we would end up again at about $304 in tax rate per $100,000 of assessment, assuming we are still using the 2016 property assessment values by MPAC. So it's in this area chart at the bottom that kind of staff loop back to, you know, what is the purpose of the updated reserve policy and what is it we need to achieve through that. Next slide. So the project details are outlined in the 2026 budget document. And of note, the current plan for major asset renewal includes $69.1 million for the arena renewal, the fire hall redevelopment, the docks and wharf replacements, and road improvements. And what's not listed here, but is included in the plan, are the recurring costs we see for the replacement of our fleet and the completing of road and bridge repairs on a like-for-like basis. So no increases to the service level, just replacing what we have and bringing it to an acceptable standard. It's also important to note what is not included in the current 10-year plan. So council's received reports on climate mitigation, the transportation master plan, the building condition assessments. None of those are yet built into this 10-year plan. And in addition, we have recommendations coming forward shortly with respect to roads needs study and bridge inspection reports. We have a public works yard study that's yet to be incorporated. And if we took all of those, we would be adding nearly $90 million in addition to what's already here in our 10-year plan. And that doesn't account for inflation. That's just at current dollars. So while not all of those initiatives are necessarily required to be in the 10-year outlook, they do represent community priorities and long-term vision from council on the future direction of this township. Next slide. So this chart just illustrates the sources of funding to support the current 10-year outlook. And it shows that contributions from the tax levy, which is the shaded bar that is kind of the second one up. You can see it from the legend. But that share of that bar continues to grow as you go out to 2035. So there'll be a larger dependence on tax revenue to meet that 10-year plan over time. This dependence could be reduced by diversifying sources of revenue. We could generate more revenue for capital through strategies such as the sale of municipal assets, securing donations from private and community partners, looking more for grants again for application-based grants that are not built into this model. So those would be other revenue sources that are not currently assumed here. Expanding and strengthening these alternative funding streams would reduce pressure on the tax levy and improve the overall sustainability of the plan. Next slide. So with every plan, there's always risks. So the model comes based on many assumptions, and this represents only one possible outcome to the future. But some of the risks are identified here. We've got future changes in operating costs. So as I mentioned, we're looking at a 2.3% annual CPI. If that varies, that could create pressures or opportunities. If we have asset failures, such as we had last year with the Crossroad Culvert, we've seen a huge expense on the Medora Street wall, then we would have to, again, pivot the plan. Cost increases and higher borrowing rates caused by global events could create financial pressures that have not been assumed. And over time, we really need to understand how these things change and keep this plan going. I think this document really is a living document that we'll continue to update as we go. Next slide. So to summarize, staff are considering a recommendation or considering an approach with respect to the reserve policy that really focuses more on the minimum balances and moving forward, the use of debt and careful monitoring of repayment limits will also be more important. We'll continue to advocate for senior levels of government to support where we have existing shortfalls and see where there are opportunities to work with them, as well as with the community in terms of fulfilling the needs. The asset management plan, again, is going to be updated in 29, and having realistic cost estimates for high risk and high priority projects will be really important in terms of understanding what our future needs are financially. Part of the future budget processes, I think we need to look at new revenue sources, setting targets perhaps for where we might look for grants. And if we don't get those grants, then do those projects proceed or don't they proceed? We also have talked around this table about the potential of a municipal accommodation tax. So that could also be another source of revenue to support operating. And overall, these goals I think are achievable and will benefit from steady focus, collaboration, and a continued effort to support the ongoing development of this strong and thriving community. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you. And similar comment. Thank you very much for this very comprehensive report. Like in advance, I suspect that most of us are going to have that same sentiment. So thank you very much for the time and effort. Committee, there is not a resolution. So this is a question, comment, opinion period. So I think I saw, was it Mayor? Okay. Councillor Zavitz, and then who is Councillor Kent? Okay.
Thank you. And through you, phrase my question.
It's question comment.
Okay, well, how about this?
There's no resolution.
It's for you.
This is your moment.
I want to
You
impress
get to
you by
shine.
asking the question first. My question is, and thank you for the report, and I'll explain in a minute, but I would appreciate it after I say just one thing. If you might, first of all, agree that we're at a crossroads in this township where we are right now with your report, and I'd love a Coles Notes version of if you agree with that or not. And while you contemplate that, my statement would be that as a senior leadership team, and certainly you as our finance guy, this is a fundamental report. I think it should be it says for information only, but I wonder if it shouldn't be in our tax bill. This is without a doubt the Coles Notes, the status report that I think typifies where we have come as not only one council, but perhaps two, perhaps even more, to where this township is right now. In my mind, we had a great discussion yesterday about it. You contemplate debt financing. You've really brought it out to the fore. You're talking about tax increases of 7.5% from now until 2034. These are all things that the constituents need to comprehend, perhaps, or maybe they're just going to come and have fun and keep paying their taxes. But I think these are fundamental pieces of information. This is like a critical path, a strategic plan, if you will. I think it's such a significant document. I'm appreciative of it being here and now, and I'm telling everyone, please look at that, because that, if you can follow it, makes a whole lot of sense. So I would ask that question, if I might. Do you believe we're at a crossroads in this township?
Director Donaldson. I don't know how you want to respond, but
as a finance,
there's lots of comments there. So
you're a finance person.
So through you, Chair. So I presented this report for information purposes because I just wanted to level set for all members around this table, for the community, in terms of where I believe we're at this point in time. Whether or not we're at a crossroads or not, I don't know if I have an opinion on that one way or the other. I think this is where we are. It's kind of like a state of the financial nation, based on the plans that we have reviewed, the decisions that we've made, the impacts we've had from external forces that we've had no control over with respect to the pandemic, with respect to the quality of the assets and the state of good repair that we want them to be in. This is where I think we are at the here and now. And if we decide that we wanted to go in a different direction, that would be at the decision of council to make those decisions.
okay, thank you. Councillor Kent, and then Councillor Burry, and then Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. I have a couple questions for you, Director Donaldson, if that's okay. I would agree, my wording might be slightly different, but I think that the work has been done, really good quality work through multiple councils to get us to the point where you have a snapshot of what reality is. And I think, I wouldn't say that we're at a turning point, but when you start to run through your reserves and you start to be in a situation where you're the best you're going to do is hold reserves at a couple $1 million a year, which wouldn't even cover the culvert problem we had this year. We are at a crossroads. We need to make some decisions about how we're funded. And as you said, I think Director Donaldson a few meetings ago, make some decisions that balance our current taxpayers and the future taxpayers who are going to benefit from the investments we made now. So correct me if I'm wrong, that what you're suggesting, and I know this isn't a report to present options, but really is a combination of a relatively high tax rate increase. This is what's presented here over 10 years in combination with debt financing. So the current piece of that is the high tax rate, and the long-term aspect to that is the debt financing, meaning that's the way you share amongst the two constituencies. That's my first question, if you don't mind.
Director Donaldson? And I'll come back to you, Councillor Kent, if you have more comments.
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, I think that's accurate. And to go back, so the $2 million roughly as an average minimum balance, it's based on, we have a $200 million plan currently, 197.5. So we'll just round it, say $200 million. Divide that by 10, it's 20 million a year. And we took 10%. So that's how we got the 2 million. So to your point, I think and I would agree, the culvert was $1.5 million or around there. If we end up with more than one of those, that wouldn't be sufficient. If we went with a higher threshold, let's say we said we wanted 20%, then that would increase our minimum reserve from 2 to 4 million. We would just have to take more debt than what's in this plan if we had a higher reserve level, because we'd hit that threshold, that low threshold quicker. And then we'd have to supplement our spending with more borrowing. But I think to your point, this is really just a one scenario that, based on some assumptions, that tries to balance, how much do we borrow and where do we keep our minimum reserves at? And the rest is, tax levy, minimum reserves, and the rest is going to have to be borrowing.
Okay, I have a follow-up if that's okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just from my background here, when I think about the debt financing, I guess I don't know how the debt financing that's now winding down, was that done on a project-specific basis? And if you're thinking, and I know we'll have a whole bunch of meetings to discuss debt alternatives as we move forward, but are you thinking this is project-specific debt financing? So you do the firehouses and then you do the arenas, or is it a larger line, which is more open-ended? One is obviously a bit safer and more comfort making. So I don't know how our old debt was structured, and I was wondering what you were off the top of your head thinking.
Director Donaldson?
Through you, Chair, yes, I would say we do it project specific. When we did the current debenture 20 years ago, it was done for specific projects through the district. And I would say that we would say we're taking this amount of borrowing and we're doing it for this project. And that may be the way. I've not taken debentures at the municipal level before. Perhaps the district requires it. I'm not sure what all the rules are, but I think that's a prudent approach to know exactly what it is you're borrowing for and how much it's costing.
Well, and in effect, that separates the short term from the long term. The tax increases cover the current shortfalls, and the debt financing covers the big projects that benefit everybody for the future for 50 years. If that's fair.
Okay, thank you. I see you're nodding your head.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
Yeah, Director Donaldson's nodding his head. Councillor Kent. I apologize. I think I had called Mayor Kelly, Councillor Burry, Councillor Roberts, and then if there's others, put your hand up. This is a good report. Councillor Posenworth.
Oh, thank you very much. And through you, and I have a real quick, I'm not going to ask you to decide whether we're at a crossroads or a turning point, but either one. On the interest rate and debt risk, I understand the interest rate risk. Presumably that's hedgeable or calculable or foreseeable. You can work with that. I understand the limit on our capacity to borrow. And again, knowable and calculable, you can work to that. But I am curious to know, do the debt markets, municipal debt markets, ever actually just dry up and nobody wants to lend into this corner? Is that a risk as well, or is that just unheard of? Thank you.
Director Donaldson?
So through you, Chair. So this would be my own personal experience, and I can't say with certainty, but governments tend to have a pretty long leash when it comes to borrowing because they have total control over the tax base. So their ability to repay, driven through their ability to tax, is what gives them that capacity to be able to borrow. And that's what we see at the senior levels of government, you know, billions and trillions in some cases with some governments because of their ability to tax their base.
Thank you. Councillor Burry.
As an allocator, I could answer some of your questions about hedging the risk or the municipal market, but that may not be appropriate. I'm going to make an observation first, which is on page 50, where we've talked about, you know, North Bay's asset plan and Sudbury's. There's not an upper tier here that seems to be struggling, but that's just potentially an observation. That being said, I am going to point out again that when it comes to the tax bill that our ratepayers get, that only 23 cents on the dollar ends up coming to the township, and that 55 cents goes to the district. So while we're talking about relatively large in percentage increases at the township, the tax bill that comes to the resident, most people have not yet figured out what slice goes to the province, what slice goes to the township, what slice goes to the district. And then to take it to the next step, what each level of the township and the district services get rendered. So one of the pushes that I'm making at district is to try and separate in their budget what's capital, what's operating, what is absolutely necessary, and what's discretionary. And I know we've talked about this, Director Donaldson, about can we at some point in our level of understanding get to the point where we understand what's discretionary, which is, you know, in my opinion, not much, because we have, I mean, you call it backlog. In my world, it's called deferred maintenance. You've got to do it. You're just deferring it, kicking the can down the road. So I will commend you in the quality of this report. I think it sets a really nice, both in tone and in giving us a really solid foundation from which we can understand the various pieces. You know, we talk about roads being a big chunk of ours. Well, you know, we also have an upper tier that's got roads. I have long talked about the duplication of services and effort, and it's something that is really disturbing to me, knowing that 55 cents of every dollar on the, you know, the bottom, when you send the money to the township, it's not coming to us. We're the collector, and you know, 24 cents is going to the province and 55 cents is going to the district, and those are the really big numbers. I think that, you know, when we talk about percentages, you know, 20% of 55 cents is bigger than 20% of 23 cents, at least in my grade 9 math.
Yes.
So thank you for all you're doing for us and helping us understand better. I still think our biggest issue as a township is trying to determine how we get a more appropriate value for the contribution we make to the upper tier, which does not seem to have as much accountability.
And if I may, through you, Chair, so I really appreciate the comment on discretionary versus non-discretionary. I think that's an important point we need to kind of focus in on as we kind of go through future budgets. And I would take us back as well to, you know, conversations that we had when we did, you know, the level of service study and a number of other things. You know, we have legislative requirements, and we talk about that, I think, in the asset management plan. Legislative requirement, minimum maintenance standards for roads. We talk about fire service. You know, what is it that we're obligated legislatively to provide? And then where do we go from there to provide the level of service that is expected by the community? So I think it's that zone where we need to kind of think about as we move forward with budgets and so on in the future, how do we define what is discretionary and non-discretionary? Because there are things above the legislative standard that we could say, okay, we could roll that back. And I would argue that probably isn't discretionary. So I think that's a great conversation that needs to be had around what do we provide and to what level do we provide it? Because that is a key driver on everything that we do on the financial side.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few comments on this. And first of all, Director Donaldson, thank you for this report. I know that Councillor Bosenworth and Sally have been pushing this in the last 2 or 3 budgets on the capital, and I appreciate that we've pushed it through to this point. This should be no surprise to anyone in this room. In 2018, when I ran for council, it was listed that we couldn't continue to be spending at the rate we were, depleting our capital reserve. Being a newbie, I got started in the budgeting process and sat back, not pushing any points till I knew more. And then there was a bright light that went on with all of us, and staff led, that, you know, we got to define the current situation. We need all these reports before we can make a decision. And we have had some fantastic reports that cost a lot of money, but we have really great foundation on what we need to do. So with this report, knowing what the current situation is, we've got to, I'll ask the mayor this question before I continue. When are we going to put on our big boy pants, big person pants, and make the hard decisions that we all know have to be made? And that should start this term. It's short, but we need to lay the foundation based on our experience for next term of council and give them guidance. This is not a nut we're going to crack overnight. All right. And secondly, I'll just tee off on this. For 8 years now, I've been hearing that we're only getting 20% of the tax dollar. I hear it numerous times, but it's time we get off the pot and have plans on how we change that. How do we get more? Just not talk about it, because that's the revenue side. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I think Mayor Kelly would like to respond, since you did call him out on this. So
Thank you very much. And through you, I guess I'm a little mystified by the comment, because we've been fighting every single district meeting to make accountability and value at the hallmark, the center of every dollar that's spent through that district council. But we are but 4 votes, and we have never won one. We bring fiscal responsibility, experience in finance and in business management. We raise issues like value for the dollars spent, some correlation between the fact that we contribute 40% to the district's funds, and I'm not going to guess the number, get half that back in measurable value from services. We more recently have raised the issue, and it's Councillor Burry, to his credit, who sort of raised this issue aggressively. We have statutory obligations at the district level to provide a certain level of service, but in some cases, for instance, we have to provide and make available one, is it called a nursing home or an old age home?
Long-term care.
One long-term care home. We have 2. We have 4, but we have one that's just being built. So to think that we're just sitting around with our finger up our nose trying to figure out what to do is wrong. We've been fighting it, and I guarantee we get 2 votes every time there's a fight about it, but we are still but 4 votes out of 20 on that council, 21 on that council. And as long as we're subsidizing everybody else's activity, what's the motivation for anybody else to support us? In order for them to agree with us, they've got to go back to their constituents and say, I'm going to have to charge you more for roads because I'm getting a different level of support than we used to from the township of Muskoka Lakes. This has been literally at the center of almost every debate about expenditures in the 4 years that I've been on district council, 3.5 years. And it comes to votes and we lose. And it's predictable that we lose. I'm always curious to know how many we'll get. Sometimes we actually get 5. We get somebody sympathetic enough to put their hand up. That doesn't happen very often. But The challenge is we have a huge investment and very little influence. This coming term is council, what do they call it? Council.
Donor.
No, yeah, donor month. No, this coming term is every other term you get to do this sort of rejigging of council what's it called?
Composition.
Composition. Thank you. But again, any request, any suggestion that we will even it up and have, say, similar votes proportionate to our contribution to their financial situation, well, it requires a majority vote. And other than the 4 people from the township of Muskoka Lakes, everybody would have to actually vote against their own best interests in order to support it. So I don't think we're just sitting around doing nothing. We really do need to up our game. Yes, we need to be more aggressive. We can't be more patient. That's the one thing we can't be. We can't afford to be more patient. But I don't think we can be more patient. And so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Supplemental here, Susan. I cannot let that
Actually,
ride.
just if I could, because there's a lot of interest in this topic, and I do think you asked the question and it put on notice a little bit our district councillors, and I can see Councillor Burry would like to respond as well first, please.
Thank you, and through you. So I'm a little shocked at the comment, but I will say that at the last 3 meetings, I have been talking very aggressively about the budget at the district and splitting it out between the capital budget and the operating budget. And from there, doing that first level, that which we are legislatively obligated to do. So we are legislatively, by the Municipal Act, obligated as a district to own one long-term care. We are not legislatively obligated to run it. So we have multiple homes and we're running multiple homes. That's discretionary. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, discretionary. So I'm asking for the budget to be decoupled between capital budget, operating budget, that which is legislatively mandated. I've put in a second bucket, which is what has been downloaded provincially that we really don't have a lot of choice about, but that we may have wiggle room. And then the third part is what is discretionary. I will tell you that the reception has been less than embracing. So there's some concern that it's going to be a lot of work to figure that out. I'm having a tough time doing that. If at some point we have to provide the Excel spreadsheet that says just fill in the numbers so that we can figure it out, we may have to do that. I don't think so. We've got very competent staff at the district. I think they know exactly where it is. And I think part of the problem is that they may not want to show just how much of what's being funded 40 cents on the dollar by the township of Muskoka Lakes that is discretionary.
Okay, so I think within that, I can see Councillor Nishikawa, as a district councillor, did you want to make a comment against?
Can I make a comment as a councillor for Township Muskoka Lakes?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to, I will come back then. I'm going to put you on the list here just because I'm trying to manage this part of the conversation. There was another comment I believe Councillor Roberts mentioned, and that is, when are we going to start making the decisions? And I think this touches upon what Councillor Zavitz, and I'm trying to pull this together. I think that this is pulling all of that information together. We have made some decisions, but there's no question this body is going to continue to have to make decisions over time. That's what we get paid the big dollars for, to make the tough decisions over the next coming years, to make sure that this place is still standing and sustainable and resilient well into the future. That's what I believe this report is that this is the cumulative impact of all of these other decisions we've made thus far. So I think that brings us back to Councillor Zavitz's earlier comment. Unless you wanted to make any comment, Director Donaldson, further on that. What I want to do is, I have 2 other people who would like to make some comment, and that is Councillor Bosemuth and then Councillor Nishikawa. So Councillor Bosemuth. I'll come back to you, Councillor Roberts, but I do want to make sure we kind of got off track a little bit by the discussion on the district. This is to do with the township And I want to make sure that other councillors have an opportunity to talk to the actual report that's in front of us today. So Councillor Bosemarth.
Yeah, first of all, just a quick comment because it's been said many times already. This is an excellent report. It is basically the financial representation of all the work that has been over the last two terms, and it's a very important document. I had some more technical questions. I think you had said we would have up to 20, in this model, we would have $24 million worth of debt, and I was wondering what percent that was of our total capacity for debt. And I have a couple of, just a couple others,
Okay.
fairly short ones.
Director Donaldson.
Sure. So through you, Chair. So I don't have that information calculated, but I can tell you it's going to be roughly, I mean, that's a changing number every year. It gets recalculated, but I would say it would be in the neighborhood of half of our capacity. I think we're able to borrow 40 to 42 million or something. So it'd be a little more than half.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The 2 million that you're proposing as a reserve minimum, is that for the current budget year, or does that looking ahead 10 years and saying, as we go forward, the reserve can never drop below 2 million over the next 10 years?
So through you, Chair. So this is just a placeholder, but it basically says it would never drop below 2 million over the next 10 years. I mean, in theory, in practicality, we would have to index that as well, because as costs increase, then the amount of the potential for emergency costs would also increase. So I think it would have to increase over time, but for the sake of the model, the way it works is it just takes a flat 10% across the 10 years.
Thank you.
And just two more quick ones. The debt service is about 2 million, and I suspect that's because we're amortizing it only over 15 years versus 20 or 30. And then the final one is, one of our options would be to adjust service levels. Adjust them down, presumably. Is that correct?
So through you, Chair. So the impact that the service levels have on the total capital outlook is they're definitely correlated. So if you decreased service levels, then you would decrease the potential impact on the 10-year capital spend. And to your comment on debt, yeah, it's a 15-year amortization assumption, and I think the borrowing rate we had assumed was something in the neighborhood of 4.35% or something. So again, how those change will affect what the service costs are, which is really what the measure is by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. It's the debt servicing costs, your ability to pay back what you've borrowed against your total revenue.
Okay. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Through you, it's just going to be comments. I'm appreciative of being able to have a coffee with you this morning for a moment. Just to have a further discussion about our direction of our plans that we've implemented over the last number of years. And I myself, I'm going to look much closer. I've always very, very dismayed, quite honestly, about that we accepted. And I was fighting some of the things, and you know, when not everybody's on board, you just look like that person that just fights everything, and that's not my intention. But to give you an example, for instance, with our community improvement plan and our request for district to do more work, we have a situation in Ballard that makes no sense whatsoever about crosswalks, and I will also say with our Parks and Rec and Trails, that whole plan, we have stuff in there that does not make a lot of sense to me. And I've been around a little bit. And in fact, been part of many of those improvements in the municipality over the years. So I really feel that for most of us, another look at what is in all these plans, because I recognize that staff have to go by what that plan is, whether I'm at this table or not. And I would be very concerned that these consultants have put things in the plans that may look pretty on paper, but don't make a whole lot of sense for even the cost to taxpayers, as well as whether we need it or not. You know, so it's always concerned me about some of our plans that, again, we look really pretty on paper, but in practicality, and remembering that, for instance, 8 months of the year, there's nothing going on. There's barely a hint of traffic, except contractors going to work in the morning, contractors going home. But all of those things need to be recognized more, in my opinion, and more comments given by council going forward than just approving or accepting the fact that staff have to work off of these plans. I believe we can have impact, and I hope we do.
Okay, thank you. I do have some comments after, but I think Mayor Kelly, you had your hand up.
Thank you. And through you, and I do have this one quick comment, and it's feedback, since I think I'm the only one who hasn't said it. It is a terrific piece of work. I think it's a really nice level set for all of us to sit back and have a look. There's one really simple reason why it's impactful and really, really helpful, is that if you read this, it draws the direct link between some of the choices we've made at this table. And Councillor Nishikawa, I think, just touched on this. We make decisions every day, almost in isolation from the overall impact that those decisions have on our capital structure, our financing ability, and most importantly, our tax rate. And there is a direct link, and the consequences of some of the decisions we make are a lot more consequential than we realize. They have consequences down the line. They cost our taxpayers a lot of money. So our goal, and I hope it has been and continues to be, to seek value. We shouldn't be spending $1 if we're only getting 75 cents back. We need to make sure, as we invest in this community, that we can see a straight line between how much we're shelling out and how much value our taxpayers are going to see from the work. And this really brings that point home, for me at least. Thank you.
I will reserve my comments because I feel like we're all touching on the same thing. At this point, this gives us a chance to, oh, sorry, Councillor Roberts, I will come right back to you in a second. It's the decision points that we have around this table that have a direct impact on the numbers that we see here. And I think everybody's touching upon that, and that becomes this current council and future council's ability to maybe not look at things in silos, but in a more global or comprehensive lens on it. I apologize. Councillor, I see hands up now that are new, and I want to make sure I've given everybody a chance to speak. So Councillor Edwards, Councillor Kent, I see you online, and then Councillor Roberts, I'll come back to you. And then we are going to take a break.
Thank you very much, through the chair. I think the loan that we took out, the debenture, it's still about 133,000 a year, is it, that we're paying, if I remember right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, 134,000 is our repayment, and this is the 2027 will be our last year.
That's what I thought was 2027. Now, of that, how much did we borrow and how much have we paid in interest? I don't need it today, okay?
I can tell you that we borrowed about 1.65 million. So it was fairly small, and it was, and I think it was north of 5%. But I mean, if I had my calculator, I could just do that.
No, this is fine, but what I'm getting at, I've sat on council for almost 16 years now. We've known we've needed a fire department up in a fire hall up in Manette. Had we put $133,000 a year towards that and saved it over the last 16 years, what we had with the interest and everything else like that. So we're borrowing all the time. We're paying interest, and it's money down the tube. If you know, did anybody here buy a car and save a little bit to pay towards it, or you just, oh, what the heck, and you know, and that's it. And I hear percentage. We pay 40% to the district of every dollar. If we double our taxes, we wouldn't be paying 40 cents of every dollar. We just need a heck of a lot more dollars. I've been asking, and thank you for showing me what it is per 100,000. And that, so you can say, okay, I think one of them was $13 100,000. So it's $1 million, it's $130, and that. And when you look at that, that's less than 50 cents a day going on.
Okay, guys, thank you. Councillor Burry.
Okay.
Keep going down.
So what I'm saying is, we're looking at it. We get a budget every year. We sit at this table and we, cut this down. So maybe Director Clucci he doesn't fix a certain road then because we've said, you know, we don't want this. And then the fire chief comes up and he says, well, if I have to, I can cut so many suits or something like that. So we're the ones who are that we're told what we should be putting in. And yet we in our wisdom cut it back because we don't want to save it. If we show what every municipality, other 5 municipalities in the district show per 100,000, we're pretty good. Because I remember, I think it was 2 years ago when we raised ours $15.86, I think it was, at about 10.4%. And yet Gravenhurst raised theirs only 2.5 and it was $16 and some odd cents. If we show them what it's actually costing coming out of their pocket rather than percentage, I think you even sent something to me that Saskatchewan now don't use percentages because it's so off skewed. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a municipality out west, through your chair, that kind of moved away from that to try to bring more absolute clarity in terms of impact as opposed to a percentage, which, depending on what your base is, can translate into more dollars or fewer dollars, as Councillor Burry mentioned earlier.
Supplemental. So if we sent that out in with the tax bills or the mayor's message that you're paying so much per 100,000, so 55 cents to the district and that, but per 100,000, show it that way. I think people would get it that we're not overly extravagant here. We're very, very frugal, in fact. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kent and then Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. I was just going to make two comments. One was, I actually think Councilor Nishikawa is right. There's nothing, this plan is a fabulous plan. Great work, big picture. It presents the picture in a broad fashion that allows us to make general decisions about how we're going to finance choices that we've made as a council and prior councils. That doesn't mean the specifics of every year's budget and decisions have been made yet. I think that on the margin, we can easily take 10% off, you know, by reviewing the annual budget or the 3-year budget plan, whatever we call it, each year. I don't think that the decisions about the spending have been set in stone. They provide the big picture based upon those individual plans that we've done. And I think that there is opportunity to make some savings. I don't think it changes the big picture. It might take 5 or 10% off on the margin on the annual spending, or on some of the big projects might be massaged a bit. So I would say, yes, I agree with her, but I don't think that means that it hasn't been done well. I think that opportunity is still in front of us to save some money down the road. I also would like to put in a placeholder that I don't know how to do this, but at some point I'd like to have a further discussion, perhaps in closed session, about the district. So I'd like to put that on the agenda for future meetings.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts, and then we are going to take a break.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to start off with an apology if my fellow councillors on the district took it that I was saying they weren't doing a good job. We've had evidence for the past 2 terms that they have been going to the trough. They've been attempting. But as Mayor Kelly has said, would you change it if you were Bracebridge? You're getting the township to pay a lot of money for roads. So the second part of this, I will say that there's a term in business, once around and up. So we've been going around a lot on this, and I think we've got to take this to an arbitrator if possible, and maybe you've thought about that and the reasons it can't be done, but it has to go to a higher power to make the decision. Thank you.
Okay.
And again, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Committee, let's take a break. It is now 10:35, so let's come back at 10:50. I think that's 15, sorry. So if I could do my math quickly, 10:50. back. I was a few minutes late myself, but that was a bit of I guess chair's prerogative. That said, I also felt that we had a really good and robust discussion this morning. On that note, I would like to welcome back item 8D, and I'm understanding without a need to go to the podium that perhaps you would like to just present this as a topic, and if anybody has questions or comments, we can ask. Is that Director Donaldson? I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have anything specific to add to the report, so.
Okay, thank you. So, committee, are there any questions or comments? It's for information only. Sorry, that's what I was just confirming, reminding myself. Information only on the ice storm assistance, the funding that we received. Does anybody have any question or comment on that report? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. Oh, there is a question or comment. Councillor Kent.
I just had a quick question for Director Donaldson. I was surprised that the accrual was for such a small amount. Is that's cash we've received back already? Could you clarify that? And why are you not comfortable taking maybe 50% of the proposed 850 or whatever the number was exactly into as an accrual in the current year financials?
Director Donaldson.
So through you, Chair. So thank you for the question. So the accounting standards would say that because it's still under review, it can't be recognized until it's confirmed. The government wouldn't, I mean, if they were to be sent a confirmation, they couldn't confirm what the amount will actually receive. I've probably been liberal with the rules in terms of accruing the cash actually received to date. But that's why I haven't accrued more of the grant in 2025, just because it's still under review and the final amount that we will receive based on a review of the eligibility of what we've submitted hasn't been completed yet.
Okay, it was just a shame. I mean, it's such a huge number, and obviously we'll get some large portion of that. We won't get all of it maybe, but anyway, okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All over to you. Director Bess Serreras. Thank you.
Turned it off first. Great. Good morning, committee. The report is before you on the Restricted Act, or lame duck, as most of us know it. As outlined in the report, to ensure business continuity, should we be in a lame duck situation in either of the timeframes outlined within the report, the Municipal Act permits delegated authority to a person or body prior to nomination day. We do currently have a bylaw in place that delegates the authority to the CAO. So this report is for information only.
Okay,
and for any questions.
Committee, are there any questions or comments? I'm seeing none. Well, thank you very much. We are now moving on to item 9A. Mr. Moore, welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. Today's report provides an overview of our existing facility fees and related policies as it relates to fee exemptions and waivers. This request came from Council during the 2026 budget process, and staff have had time to review and prepare the report before you today. As it relates to background material, the report has got lots of previous reports that have been brought over the years, and basically how our current situation regarding facility fees and waivers. We have our base, which is our fees and charges bylaw. This sets our standard rates for all facility rentals. And we review these every couple years and update them as required. In turn, we also have a facility user fee policy. This policy speaks to which groups and uses potentially are exempt from those standards fees when renting one of our facilities. And that policy came into effect at the end of 2023. So really the beginning of 2024. So as it relates to reviewing our current fees, specifically in the arenas, obviously going through the recent arena action plan, we have lots of great detail and analysis within that we can draw from. In reviewing our fees and comparing to surrounding municipalities, we're actually very comparable with our standard rates there. As identified within the report, the one area where we are different is our minor youth rates, and that rate is set within the fees bylaw. That reduced rate doesn't come through the policy, where we do tend to be around 50% lower than our surrounding municipalities for our minor youth rate for the arena uses. As we move into our community centers, obviously the results and implementation of that policy at the beginning of 2024, we saw more of an impact here. A large part of the eligible exemptions relate to uses in our community centers. Table 4 within the staff report provides a good outline of the amount of rentals we've seen over the past 3 years, the amount of fees we've in turn then waived. It also highlights the related utility and maintenance costs as well as custodian costs, and we can see those beginning to rise with an uptake in more usage. So with the purpose of the policy, we obviously wanted to increase the use of our facilities, and I think through that table, we're definitely seeing the facilities are getting used more. With that, understanding our total for foregone revenue as it relates to arenas, community centers, as well as community grants that we provide, operating grants, staff project we see a foregone revenue of just over $400,000 per year. If we take into account some of the in-kind contributions we provide to the community, facility space that we provide at no charge, that number climbs to approximately over $500,000. Now, staff acknowledge that through that implementation of that policy, from a recreation standpoint, we obviously don't have a recreation department. We don't provide many programs such as our surrounding municipalities. And that was the purpose of reducing or providing exemptions to user groups to provide those recreational opportunities. In saying that, there still does seem to be some private uses that do qualify under that policy as well. Staff have identified in the report birthdays, funerals, celebrations of life, dinners, etc., that we could potentially look at revisiting those fees and possible exemptions. So with that, at the conclusion of our review, there is a recommendation with the report, and staff have recommended that we return with a further update, reviewing those exact private uses and consideration of possibly revisiting their exemptions or related fees, as well as the minor youth rate for our arenas. There are some alternative approaches as well that have been listed within the staff report, should committee have a desire. And with that, Chair, we're available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And committee, I do actually have a resolution for this one, so let's just be focused on questions right now. I'll read the resolution and then comment. So questions? Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. Through you to Corey Moore. Sorry. I'm sort of being directed to the district use of our halls, because that was commented in and quite honestly, as one of the persons that struggled really hard to get district to bring some of that programming to Muskoka Lakes, I realized that the fact that they jumped on board when they weren't paying rent, but I wanted to have an understanding, if you know, of what other municipalities pay for those same uses that we give the district the use of the hall.
Mr. Moore?
Yes, through you, Chair, I have reached out to my colleagues surrounding their facility fees, exemptions, waivers. I think for the most part, they're similar to us in regards to district programs, where they often provide the facility for them, similar to us to help encourage them to come out to these more rural areas. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Bosemuth?
Thank you, through you to Corey. There's a comment in here that says to ensure township community facility remains sustainable, might consider reinstating user fees for private facility rentals. The community center that I'm most familiar with is in Manette. And there's a group of people, mostly men, but often not, who get there every morning for coffee. They don't pay anything for that usage. There's yoga that goes on in there. There's choir. I don't know if any of them pay or not. Are those, when you stated that here, are those the things you would consider in that policy?
Through you, Chair, no, I don't think we'd be looking at those types of uses. I think we'd still like to encourage the recreational, social, cultural type uses, but these more so private, I would call them, events is I think where there's an opportunity to revisit.
Okay. I don't see any other hands, so I'll read the resolution and questions, comments after. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that staff report back with proposed updates to the fees and charges bylaw and facility user fee policy as outlined in staff report OPS 2026-008, and that said report includes an implementation process and communication plan. Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Roberts and then Councillor Bosemuth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like your suggestions and I'd like further information on what the minimum insurance cost recovery would be if we did it. A small to moderate user fee. I like the surcharge for cleaning because not all events require a lot of cleaning, but some do. And find out more information about the annual membership model.
Okay, thank you.
I don't need that now. But...
So through you, Chair, I think if staff were to report back and there'd be a desire for more information regarding those such alternative approaches, staff would just seek that direction. I think as it relates to right now, they're kind of just there as on the table.
Okay.
So staff would just like that clarification, yes, from committee.
Okay, so I think just for your understanding, Councillor Roberts, just making sure that those were just ideas as alternatives within the report. So if there's one or two of those that you think you'd like further information on, we'd have to follow the standard process to amend the resolution to have that come back. Okay. Councillor Bosemuth?
No.
No? Okay.
Don't need it.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes, thank you. When you do a study with the other like municipalities, do you ask them what how much staff they have that they're going to? We don't have a recreation department as such. We don't run programs. We should bring that in with it as well, because I think you find that we're very reasonable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Moore. And Mr. Cox, welcome to the podium. I believe you have a few ahead of you.
That's correct.
And welcome to the podium.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of committee. So my first report this morning provides an update on the results of public consultation for the economic development strategy that was has been running since January through the month of February and is still continuing in some form up until this point. The full results of the consultation and the initial directions that we heard from it are included in your report. I will note that consultation is still ongoing in the form of one-on-one interviews between our consultant team and members of the business community, and our next steps will involve refining the initial directions that you have in your report into a specific implementation plan and finalizing the strategy. Final strategy itself will be submitted for council approval in early summer of 2026, and we're on track to meet that deadline. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the results of the consultation that are included in your report at this time. Thank you.
Committee, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Roberts?
Yes, you asked for comments, correct?
It's just for information, so.
Okay, yeah. No, I read through this report with interest. Thank you. And I look at your list of goals, such as housing affordability, investigating that workforce, stronger year-round economy, making the processes more straightforward and easier to do, and protecting character. And out of that list there, I'm thinking we've been trying to look at these other ones for a long time, and I'm looking forward to what you might say, but I'm thinking those are hard nuts to crack. Other than the one to make the processes easier, that's the only one I think that's we'll make great strides in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Cox, along with what Gord had just mentioned about tough nuts to crack and things like that, I'm wondering at what point do we just give up on some of these? So for instance, we talked about businesses in, I'm going to look at Port Carling directly, but not being open. And you know, we even took the steps to say when new businesses were being built, that you need to be four-seasoned. Like that, you know, because the excuse used to be that, well, the building isn't insulated, so we can't stay open in the winter time and that sort of thing. But I also realized that, and over the years, having talked to some of those business owners that show up in June, they don't even show up in May, they show up in June, and then literally can't wait for Labor Day to close the door. But my question is, how do we don't, at what point do we just give up on that? Because we can't decide what businesses are how they're gonna do their business, essentially. But it takes a lot of energy and effort at this council table to constantly have this conversation about what we're gonna do about the seasonality of what we are. And where I'm going is I would like to actually have one day another strategic little moment that we actually determine who and what we are, and realizing that the seasonality is what it is. And then what other thing, anyhow, I'm just saying, I just don't know. It just feels to me like we have these same conversations for years and years and years. No disrespect. Thank you.
And through you, Madam Chair, I will say that in the discussions that were had as part of the consultation and in our work that we've been doing with our consultant team over the past few months, I think we have been fairly realistic in our assessment that we have to work with what we have, and what we have is a heavily seasonal economy. And I don't think there's any action that any municipality or any level of government can take to turn that into a full-fledged year-round economy overnight. What we can do is we can look for small ways in which we can promote business stability, so that if we have a seasonal business that it's only feasible for them to operate, you know, from May or June to Labor Day, then we're taking steps to support that business so that they come back year over year. So we have a core of businesses, and we don't see some of the turnover that we've had in the business community in the past 5 years or so. So I certainly take the comment well, and I certainly in the work that we've been doing, we've been trying to be as realistic with working with what we have and strengthening what we have rather than trying to completely change the makeup of our community.
Okay. Thank you. Any Councillor Burry?
Thank you, through you. So maybe this is a really good example of where we look at our discretionary spending. Because to me, this is 100% discretionary. We're not legislated to do it. We're not obligated to do it. We're doing it because, I don't know, we're doing it. We've made a decision, or someone made a decision, and we've not made a decision to not do it. But I think it plays into the hand of what are we obligated to do? What is discretionary? And quite frankly, you know, I'm not a big fan of subsidizing private enterprise at all. And I'm not a big fan of councils contributing to not-for-profits, because the not-for-profits have ability to do that. You know, we are the least effective mechanism as a body of distributing cash. So because there's no, I don't get to write it off. Where I can make a contribution if it could be an allowable business expense, and I can take that off. Like, there's all kinds of accounting rules that are punitive to municipalities being in this discretionary spending space. And so I think it plays into what I was talking about earlier. Understanding what we have to do and what we are electing to do may decide that we're just not going to do this anymore. It's not the best use of the funds from the township.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, through you. So having sat on the Economic Development Committee in the previous council, I think there are ways, to Councillor Burry's point, that we could do on a low or no cost scenario where we could continue to cultivate economic development, or at least appear to be doing that, and at least appear to be caring about what happens in our township. And that would be a combination of public and a few councillors. And, you know, to that end, it doesn't have to be a $35,000 report. It could be an ongoing, and I felt that we were moving the needle a little bit in our last term. For whatever reason, for the reasons we didn't have it this term, but perhaps that could be something that we could contemplate later. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Burry.
Thank you. Thanks for indulging me. The comment I would have is, you know, I think it's important for the township to have economic development people, but probably the biggest thing that we could do to help economic development is stay out of the way of private enterprise. And you know, try and help facilitate with our rules. And to Councillor Zavitz's point, there's probably lots of things that we can do without spending a great deal of money. That's where I'd like to see us.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? One of the things that I think, just picking up on Councillor Zavitz's comments, that we learned in the last term is the importance of truly understanding our role as a municipality in economic development, which is what I think you're touching upon as well. And becoming, I think it was part of our other strategy, was just our role is to create the conditions for private enterprise to thrive and flourish. So what does that look like and feel like? And are there tools that we have available to us to help foster that? So I hear these comments as well, and appreciate you bringing up that insight. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Cox on that report? Seeing none, we will move along then to the next one, which is the Muskoka Lakes Community Fund project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my second report this morning contains the recommended initial project streams for the Muskoka Lakes Community Fund. As committee will recall, the Muskoka Lakes Community Fund is being established in partnership with the Muskoka Community Foundation to facilitate community fundraising and township-led projects that have a substantial community impact. As outlined in my report, once the community fund receives a donation for a specific project, that donation cannot be returned or refunded if the project is delayed or canceled for some reason. As a result, only projects with firm municipal commitment are being recommended for the inclusion in the fund. And to this end, a resolution of council supporting the project is required prior to its inclusion in the community fund. At this point, staff are recommending that the upcoming revitalizations of Hannah Park, the Port Carling Arena, and the Minette Fire Station as initial project streams for the community fund. The full details of the proposal can be found in my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that committee may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a resolution in front of us, committee, so I will ask for questions, then I'll read the resolution. Are there any questions for Mr. Cox? Councillor Bosemarth.
Thank you. Through you. Setting them up is, I presume, just step one. And perhaps you can help me about what the next steps are. You know, what is the role of the township in helping to raise the funds versus the community fund? You know, what are those separations? I think there's some really very exciting things that we can do here. But, you know, I guess this is just the beginning. What are the next steps? That's sort of question one. What are the next steps? And what's the difference between the role of the township plays versus the community fund in actually encouraging constituents to donate?
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the way that it's envisioned would be that encouraging, publicizing, encouraging donors to contribute to the fund is a joint effort between the township and the community foundation. I think both organizations have a role in playing into that. Certainly, I think through conversations that we've had with the foundation, the township has a fairly wide reach in terms of the audience that our communications channels are able to reach. And so I would imagine that the township has a fairly large role in promoting that. So once these project streams are identified and established, it would be township staff working in partnership with the foundation to develop the materials and the communication strategy necessary to publicize that this opportunity for people to contribute is out there, and working on an ongoing basis to promote that. I will say at this point, we don't have the information to know how much interest or public appetite there is for the community fund. Certainly, if you look to comparable examples, the structure that we're proposing is very similar to the Huntsville Community Fund, which was set up about a year ago. And that's been an ongoing process there, but they have seen, I think, some fairly good uptake of that. And so we would be continuing to work through that process and monitoring as it goes. And if there's other actions that we need to take or to improve the effectiveness of the fund, we'd look for that.
Okay, thank you.
Second question is, are naming rights part of this, or is that a separate process?
Through you, Madam Chair, naming rights are not part of this right now. Certainly, I know that township staff are looking at our naming rights and sponsorship policies as part of our larger assessment of ways in which we can find additional revenue sources for capital projects. And I imagine that will be coming back to committee for review at some point in the future.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. I don't think so. I'll read the resolution and then comments. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Whereas the Township of Muskoka Lakes has created a Muskoka Lakes Community Fund to facilitate fundraising for approved community projects. And whereas a resolution of council is required to allow projects to be funded through the community fund. Now therefore be it resolved that project streams for the Port Carling Arena, Minette Fire Station, and Hannah Park be established within the Muskoka Lakes Community Fund. Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, I'm looking at Hannah Park here. Would we be matching dollars? So in other words, if somebody give $100, we would match it the same as we've done for Windermere when they did theirs. It's an incentive to get people to actually donate.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is not as the fund is envisioned at the moment. That would require that's not how it's been set up. In the example of Hannah Park, the township currently is committed in 2026 to redoing the playground and the wharf, and the stream through the community fund would ideally be used in order to enable some of the additional components in that redevelopment plan to proceed. So perhaps the splash pad or enhancements to the washrooms or whatever it may be. That's how the fund is set up right now.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. I think, yes.
Thank you. And through you, I had failed to disclose an interest that requires my recusal on this next one. On the first intake, one of the proposed grant recipients is the Port Carling Lions Club. I'm a member, but I'm also an officer and a director, and so I will be stepping out at this point and come back later.
Thank you.
You did.
just said, okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my third report this morning concerns the spring intake of the Community Grants Program. The township accepted applications between March 9th and April 6th this year, and 10 applications are being recommended for funding. Full details of the applications are included in Appendix 1 of this report. If committee approves these recommendations, staff are also recommending that the remaining funds be transferred to a reserve and being made available for use in the 2027 grants program. This is an exception to the policy, which would ordinarily require a second intake in the fall, but in staff's assessment, there would be insufficient funding remaining for a full second intake in 2026. That concludes my remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other? I do have a resolution here. So are there any questions? Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, and through you. As it relates to the Muskoka ratepayers, and just as I go through your list, the list of where we're sprinkling this $25,000, I guess my first reaction was there are island or cottage associations that are recipients, no problem, and yet we won't do is a Muskoka Ratepayers Association viewed as a special interest group, or is there some reason why they're not getting anything and cottager associations are getting whatever they came and asked for? And again, it's just sort of a real high level question more than anything.
So through you, Madam Chair. So there's really two lenses in which we assess applications through. The first is the nature of the organization, and then the second is the nature of the work or project that they're proposing. So in this case, I mean, the Muskoka Ratepayers Association is a self-described advocacy group, which I think under a strict reading of the policy would be considered a political organization as the policy is defined right now. But also there is the assessment of the nature of the application itself, which was just identified for being sort of for day-to-day operations, communications, and it was assessed through the review of the applications that in a lot of ways we could see that work being already provided through some of the communications that the township puts out about deliberations around this table, projects that are being undertaken by the township, that sort of thing. So that was the basis for the recommendation. However, as noted in the alternatives of the report, committee does absolutely have the right to make amendments or recommendations that serve as exemptions to the approved policy.
Okay, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. Secondarily, through you, because they're all advocacy groups. To my mind, the Acton Island Cottagers Association or Leonard Lake or whomever association comes forward, I think everyone should be given their due diligence, and I just don't understand. I mean, if the MLA came forward and said, "Hey, if they're going to get $1,500, we'd like $1,500 as well," that's what would happen. I'm pretty certain of that, but I don't know where we begin and end. I guess it's my question as to how do we feel about it in terms of front facing. I'm not suggesting anything other than I think it's interesting that we talk about it.
Through you, Madam Chair, I will also note that the community grants program has traditionally been used to fund specific projects that organizations are taking. So whether it be a contribution towards the development of, say, the trails that the Acton Island Association is attempting to develop, or some other project that is being undertaken, as opposed to day-to-day operations. The community grants program wasn't really intended to subsidize those sorts of operations.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Nishikawa. Again, we're in questions, and then I'll read the resolution.
Yes, I think you're right with that, because some of the lake groups, they have a project where they're going to water studies or something like that. I had somebody approach me to want to do a strongman competition in November, which is economic development, but there's basically nothing left in the fund. And that, because I mentioned that to them, and they are also going to use one of the community centers. They thought maybe Hecla up there because it's stone throwing and things like that. But like I said to them to contact the township, but that's what I thought. We've been giving 25,000 for as long as I can remember. And that is about time we maybe looked at upping that a little bit. But that's just my thought on it. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to make sure, a question, I kind of slipped there for a second. Counselor Nishikawa, or sorry, Counselor Edwards, did you have a question? No, okay, sorry. Counselor Nishikawa.
Yeah, my question through you to Mr. Cox is essentially similar to what Alan was talking about, but so a couple of these I'm concerned about in fact we have seen the people come to the table for years. More than once, more than twice, I will say. And I don't know as a taxpayer that I want to fund these specialty groups. That in fact, it's for those members' enjoyment, but it doesn't affect my life in living here in Muskoka. Like it's not, I'm not fixing a road, I'm not fixing the things that I need. And so I'm kind of concerned that I would go back to Chautauqua. So for 100 years, you know, we've been funding that group. I can see things have really developed over the years. I'm very concerned about some of the others that they just keep coming back, and like plein air, for example. And then also, I don't understand like a couple of questions I do have about the trail system and things. Normally, so is this on private lands or?
Okay, so let me I just want to make sure there's specific questions for Mr. Cox. I'm slipping right now, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. If there are specific questions, it's sounding to me like the ballot plein air or the plein air was a question that you had on here,
That
as well
one,
as the
an
Acton Island.
like mostly because generally when my history of developing trails in Muskoka Lakes is the plan would come forward with a staff primarily from Public Works and where municipal roads are involved or municipal all of that type of thing. I'm not clear what this is and how that the average taxpayer will benefit from these things, as that's what I'm looking for those answers.
Okay, and so I think specific to those two, Mr. Cox.
So through you, Madam Chair. So I will say that when we review and score applications, whether or not the organization has received funding previously is a factor that is considered. It's noted in the appendix when they received funding most recently last. Certainly in a case where there wasn't insufficient funding to fund all of the requests that were eligible under the policy, we would prioritize those that had not received funding in previous years. However, as the policy is written right now, there is nothing to prevent organizations from applying year over year for support. Although, as you say, we always try to prioritize new applicants as long as they're bringing forward projects that are of benefit to the community. So with regard to specifically the trails question on Acton Island, my understanding of the project is that the association is working to develop a network of public access trails that will primarily run along private property. That is my understanding of the project. I am not necessarily fully up to speed on the details, but that's my understanding of what the project is going to entail.
Okay, maybe Director Colucci, just do you want to expand?
Yes.
Thank you, and through you. So yes, staff have been working with the Acton Island Association, and they are planning to they have an existing trail network on private property, but they want to extend that trail network to unopened road allowances within the Acton Island area. So, you know, in the background, you know, aside from this application, we're also working with them to get an agreement for them to build those trails within the road allowances in Acton Island. So that'll be coming back to committee sometime in the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you through you to Director Colucci. Are we setting ourselves up for something in the future that we're going to have to collect tax dollars to maintain?
Director Colucci?
Well, through you, the agreement that we're negotiating would require them to do all the maintenance on the trails. And obviously if they stop maintaining it, then the trails would just not be used.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you through, and I would just request through you to Mr. Pink, could we put on the list to revisit these policies within here? I actually thought we did bring forward that if you got previous years funding that you just don't keep getting, but I'm asking if that could be brought back, or what steps would I have to do to ask for this to come back?
Okay, so
council?
it's interesting. I was just asking the same question. When was it the last time? Because I feel like a lot of these questions are centered around the policy. It seems to me that you've been following the policy as it is and following within the framework of the funding. And actually what's before us right now is just approval of what we have. That's second to that. So let me read the resolution. And then maybe Director CAO Pink could help us after figure out how we navigate that second if we want to bring it back. I can't remember when we last reviewed it. Moved by Councillor Bosenworth, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the 2026 Community Grants Program Funding Approval Recommendations outlined in Appendix 1 of Staff Report DSES-2026-015 be approved, and that any underspending in the current year's community grants budget be transferred to a reserve and be available for use in 2026 to fund community grants without impacting the tax rate, and that it be recommended to the mayor that this item be included in the 2027 budget. So I will open up the floor to more questions and comments, but right before I do that, I am going to ask CAO Pink if you could help us understand the policy and a path forward there.
Certainly, thank you, and through you. Should committee wish to review the policy again, I think it would be an amendment to the resolution, directing staff to come back with a report. But I would note, as in the report, it was actually February 2026 where a committee did update said policy. So it has fairly recently been updated, and it might, Mr. Cox may even recall a previous, I think this might be the second or third iteration, we've done some updates. We're happy to do so again, again at the direction of committee. I'd look to the clerk. I don't think it's necessarily changing a previous decision of council, but I believe our procedural bylaw would prohibit revisiting an item within, I believe it's 3 or 4 months. So we may have to wait another month or two, possibly to enact that resolution and come back with a future report. I hope that helps clarify.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Nishikawa.
I think it's good putting it in the reserves, but I think it would be nice if we left it if somebody come in and they had a real good application that we could use the funds because it was in this year's funding. But if no one comes forward, I wouldn't advertise it. But if somebody that does come through, they could come to council and maybe get a grant. But it's just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa and then Councillor Roberts.
Sort of along the same lines that Alan had mentioned, just because we budgeted an amount doesn't mean we have to spend it. And I almost feel like, and I don't know, I didn't do this report or anything like that, but there's a few of these I would have said not this year or not now, quite frankly. And honestly, it feels like we're just trying to fill the getting rid of that money as opposed to being a little more just thinking about where our tax dollars are going.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. And if Councillor Edwards was in favor, I'd make the motion to not move it into reserve and put it quietly away, because we often get groups coming in at the last minute and say, you know, we're having a hockey tournament or something like this. Can you give us some money? So rather than put in a reserve, if you can just quietly go in there and then go back at the end of the year or something, that would be my preferred way to do it. Councillor Edwards, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. And through you, sorry, I was just consulting with our clerk. It sounds to me like we have two members who would like to put forward a motion to remove
Yeah, I will second that.
the part of the recommendation that the remaining funds be transferred to the reserve. They would like Mr. Cox to hold on to that money in the event that somebody, yes.
Sorry. Through you, I'm hearing, and just when we were speaking here, we're moving the final two paragraphs. However, I think there's a piece that does need to be addressed, because if we leave it as is, because there's funds still available, we would go out for a second call out, and you're asking us not to go out for a second call out. So I actually think it's a further amendment to the second paragraph to not put it into a reserve, but also not to do a second call out.
Okay, so is that a motion that the two of you would like to put forward? So just give me a moment so I can get my head back into the procedure we have to go through right now. We just need a couple of minutes. Thank you. As committee, I now have a motion that's been put forward by two members of committee. I will read that amendment on that motion. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to strike out the second and third paragraphs and the following be inserted in its place, and that staff be directed not to proceed with a fall call out for community grants. Yes, that's. Okay, so I've read this amendment. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, that carries. And now I will ask all those in favor of the main motion as amended. I will call that question. Okay, that carries. All those opposed? Okay, thank you. That carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Cox. Now, we are now moving along to item 10D. Ms. Huff, welcome to the podium. Housing.
So this is the last in a series of reports that staff have presented over the past year as we make progress on updating the shifts. Improvement program to provide new incentives for affordable housing.
Microphone?
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. We will start again.
Sorry. Good morning, committee. So this is the last in a series of reports that staff have presented over the past year as we have made progress on updating the township CIP program to provide new incentives for attainable housing. The purpose of this report is to seek committee's endorsement of the updated CIP plan as attached in Appendix 2 of this report, and to get direction that the implementing bylaws be brought forward to council for final approval. Committee may recall that this update required an amendment to the township's official plan, which has now been done, and the district has recently notified of their approval of that amendment. A full consultation program was completed in support of this update, the results of which have been presented to committee and council previously. And to be clear, the existing CIP programs are to remain as is. The update is simply an introduction of 5 new programs tailored specifically to housing and to update one of the existing attainable employment housing grant program. I will say that the programs as are presented today in Appendix 2 are virtually the same as has been presented to committee previously. So no changes have been completed to these programs since then. Finally, these programs are proposed to be funded as all CIP projects are through the budget that was assigned in 2026. It's a $100,000 budget. Staff will monitor the applications and come back potentially in the future if additional funding is needed, but there will be no implications from a budget perspective for these particular programs this year. Finally, I do note that staff will be bringing forward an update to the program policy, which guides the implementation of these programs, as it will need to be slightly tweaked just to reflect the new programs. And this will be brought forward at a future meeting. Finally, staff is anticipating still a spring intake for CIP. And if this updated CIP program is approved by council, the new programs will be available this spring to applicants. So I'll leave it there and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Committee. I do have a resolution, but I am going to ask for questions at this point. Are there any questions for Director Huff? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that committee endorse the amended community improvement plan attached as Appendix 3 to report DSES-2026-16, which includes additional attainable and employee housing incentive programs, and that the implementing bylaws to adopt the amended CIP and expand the community improvement project area to the whole of the township be forwarded to council for final approval. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Boseworth?
If I'm not mistaken, and I should know this, but this includes mechanical improvements and facade improvements for our businesses, correct?
Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. So the existing CIP programs do include an incentive for just those things, but this is introducing new programs specifically for housing.
I'm just wondering if there's any appetite around the table for excluding some of those, excluding mechanical and facade. As to Councillor Burry's point earlier, this is money going to private enterprise. Sometimes they have been applications that just didn't feel very good. I only raised the point. I'm not going to push it too hard, but
we just had a very similar conversation. I just want to keep us focused on what's in front of us right now is about housing and the specific portion of the CIP and then an amendment.
Fine.
But if we would like to relook at that policy as a whole, the CIP, then that would be something separate. We just got a little bit caught up on that in the last discussion as well. I can ask CAO Pink if you would like to know when we most recently revisited that CIP program.
Thank you. Through you, similar to the last discussion, I believe that policy was reviewed as well. I don't want to put Director Huff or Mr. Cox on the spot. They may recall the date. I don't believe, again, there was a decision to remove that program stream entirely, but I do believe the policies and the criteria around it were refined. And I see Mr. Cox probably recalls off the top of his head when that might have been.
So through you, Madam Chair, I will note that Council approved amendments to the CIP implementation policy. I believe it was in February of this year. The intent was that that updated policy has not come back to committee yet because the intent was to combine those updates and the updates that would be required for the new programs in one policy and bring everything back at the same time. As part of those changes to the policy that were approved by committee earlier this year, the priority for the mechanical upgrades has been reduced to be the lowest priority program. So it is still in there, but it will, all the other programs will be prioritized before that. And as Director Huff said, that policy will be coming back to this body for approval within the near future.
thank you for that clarification, and I do recall that.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions, Councillor Zabit?
Thank you, and through you, and I guess to the mayor, if I might, in his capacity from the district's perspective, as that housing chair of that task force, I'm wondering your opinions on where this lands with you in that other role. Are we doing enough? Are we doing our job? Are we doing what's expected of one of 6 municipalities? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you're going to have an opinion on that, I'm sure. And I just wondered if you could share that. Thank you.
So maybe I would like to give you that opportunity to respond, but just before I do that, I would like to read the resolution if I could, and then we can open it up to conversation. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that committee endorse the amended community improvement plan attached as Appendix 3 to report DSES-2026-16, which includes additional attainable and employee housing incentive programs, and that the implementing bylaws to adopt the amended CIP and expand the community improvement project area to the whole of the township be forwarded to council for final approval. So with that, I will turn that back to you now, Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you. It's an excellent question, and I guess to try to draw the distinction, at district, the focus is more on policy. It's more on seeking additional funding from other levels of government, federally and provincially. And it's more on a bigger picture approach. I don't want to go too far into it. There hopefully will be an announcement in the next couple of weeks, but it's much different. It's a bigger, sort of a structural approach, all of which are tools that can be used locally and can be promoted locally to develop more affordable and attainable housing in each of the 6 municipalities. So I think that, it's not really a jurisdictional issue. It's just the scale and scope of the kinds of things that we're doing at district and with the housing task force is more policy driven, and it's bigger, structural than locally. Our efforts here, I mean, we need to find a way to grow the housing. It's part of an economic development model that lags because we don't have places to put new people. We need to make sure we're doing everything we can to support initiatives like the 2 in Bala, the Bala Bay Inn and the Legion, and other projects like that. Not necessarily affordable by the definition of the CMHC, but every new house into the housing stock solves a problem.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, discussion? Councillor Nishikawa?
I just wanted to, and Mr. Cox might remember this when we had our economic development meeting in Bala. I just wanted to remind people, we are really, really restricted in Muskoka Lakes of how much land that we have available to do affordable housing. Very, very restricted. And so just saying, going back to my other comment about deciding who we are and what, are we a tourism part of the district sort of thing, or whatever that is. But expectations within Muskoka Lakes are very, very limited to the amount of water that we have and not a lot of land, just saying.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I've read the resolution. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now moving on to our new business, and we have a few items under here. The first is to go back to earlier today, our discussion on the deer population in Windermere Village. And I believe there was a few requests that were made, and one was to consider a bylaw. So I just wanted to open up the floor to conversation or discussion amongst committee. So Councillor Nishikawa, and then anybody else who wants to make a comment.
Thank you. I would approve of the bylaw, and I would also say I'm aware of two major feeders, I guess, within both Walker's Point and Torrance, and it's generally done by hunters in this case. But as far as everything else goes, I think, yes, we can do a fine for the feeding. I can't, anything else, nature should take its, I'm just reminded constantly that I chose to be here because of the nature. And I would love to send one of my moose that happened to traverse through my property over to Windermere, because that will help quite a bit, because deer don't like moose. And I'm just saying, but that's a whole, I just have to always respect the fact that I chose to be here in Muskoka with the wildlife. And so I like the ability for us to fine people. And you're right, $200 or whatever that fine is very minimal. So that's about as far as I can go with this particular situation.
Okay, so the recommendation or the support is to put forward a resolution to explore a bylaw prohibiting the feeding of wildlife in the Windermere area was their request. And the second was to include a significantly higher than $200 fine to be enforced. So I think those were their two asks. I see other hands, so I'll come back. I think I see Councillor Kent, Councillor Zavitz, Mayor Kelly, Councillor Bosemuth. I'm going to write that down now. Okay. Councillor Kent?
Thank you. I am supportive of a bylaw. I guess I was surprised. I thought we had, and maybe this is just me not knowing, I thought we had some sort of no feed the animals policy already, but I don't understand if we're going to do a bylaw, why we would do it for Windermere only. I think it obviously applies across the township. We've all got the same problem with deer. In my case, it's not because of feeding, but I mean, these deer are everywhere and they're in packs. What was clear to me from the conversation this morning is that the problem they believe is isolated in a couple of feeders, and it wouldn't require a lot of bylaw management time to deal with that. They made it seem much bigger, like we need a full-time bylaw officer. No, we need somebody to pay a visit once we have a bylaw 1 or 2 times, and based on a complaint that's issued by somebody in the community. So I don't see that as a substantial increase in our resources required. But I would suggest we do a bylaw that's broader than that if we don't have something already. I thought we did.
Okay, thank you. I wrote this down.
Is
Councillor-
that okay? Can you answer my question? then?
Okay,
Have a
yeah, sorry.
bylaw?
CAO Pink will answer yes.
Thank you. Just to clarify, the township does not have a feeding wildlife bylaw. However, I believe it was Planning Committee or General Finance Committee approximately 2 years ago did receive a delegation from residents in Port Carling that wished the municipality to explore that ability. Staff did write a report at the request of committee, and council opted not to proceed. And just further, I mean, this is certainly part of the discussion, but just to maybe flavor some of those discussions, I can certainly appreciate at first glance how it may seem simple to, 3 feeders in a community. Easy to enforce that bylaw. As they often say, the devil's in the details a little bit. It's going to be awfully challenging to craft a bylaw that prohibits feeding some wildlife, as Mayor Kelly previously pointed out. But suddenly it allows feeding of birds, for example. So there'll be challenges there. Of course, we've heard about a lot of landscaping. That in essence feeds a lot of the animals as well. So there will be challenges to it, especially township-wide, and that was largely what was included in the staff report 2 years ago. But as per the request, if committee wishes, I think the direction being sought is to ask staff for a report on the issue. We're happy to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you. Through you, certainly in support of that staff report that the CAO just mentioned. Whether it's all 4-legged creatures shouldn't be fed, and then all of a sudden it's what about turkeys and things like that. So it's 2 and 4-legged, et cetera. So I don't know where you draw the line, except that this is a problem, and I think we need to help these folks out, and it's not just here; it's all over the township. The potentiality of it. So I don't think it's beyond our scope to go ahead and do something in terms of a bylaw for feeding.
Yeah, so I'm hearing
So I'm
support for the
supporting.
concept of bringing back a report.
Right.
Okay. Councillor Bosemuth? No. Mayor Kelly? I wrote that down, the order this time.
Thank you very much. And through you, just to address a couple of things. We all came here to enjoy the wildlife, but these animals aren't wildlife. They're domesticated. They're pets. They're big beige colored rats, quite frankly, and they act like that. They come to you expecting to be fed. So don't think we're just abusing a bunch of wild animals. They've lost their wild. Number 2, I still have an issue, and this is really for the direction of whoever's working on the report. I'm going to be concerned. This is a Ministry of Natural Resources, Province of Ontario designated deer wintering habitat, I think is the vernacular. I don't know what that means in its entirety, but whatever we do, we need to respect the fact that this is recognized as an area deer attend to winter, presumably because access to food is better, or better food, or fewer wolves or something. So we gotta make sure we're mindful of that. I'm really also very concerned that we not set our wonderful bylaw enforcement folks up for failure by making it's so easy to write a bylaw and so easy to toss it off and feel good that we solved a problem. The real problem is how in the heck do we enforce some of it? I understand the fact of bird feeders. As I said earlier, I have one, and I can tell you most of the food that goes into it are consumed by the deer that are smart enough to come along and knock it all off and eat it. If we're going to go away from bird feeders, then presumably we're going to prescribe how high the bird feeder needs to be off the ground, especially as the snow builds underneath it, or it's going to be accessible to deer. We just have to be really careful. I would be in Mr. Bender's situation, who is that his name who spoke? He may have just run a $15,000 gravy train for the deer. He keeps replacing hostas, and they keep coming along and eating them. So let's not catch that action or behavior as feeding the deer, even though it's technically what's going on. So I think I'd like to see the report. I know we looked at this 2 years ago. I think we passed on it or voted it down, the recommendations down, or maybe the recommendation was to not move forward. But those specific issues I need to be comfortable on before I think we're going to move forward and just kid ourselves into thinking we're accomplishing something.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bosemuth.
If you talk to any naturalists, they say any feeding of any wild animal is not a good idea. That said, I don't think we should be worried about bird feeders. But if you are feeding the deer in the wild so that it's easier to shoot them, that's just as much of a problem from a natural point of view as a human inconvenience point of view. And so I think the report should address some thought about that. But clearly, I would support a report coming back on how to deal with things at minimum in urban centers. But I'd like to have it address and think about township-wide.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Burry and then Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, through you. So I'm exceedingly sympathetic to the plight of those people that have been overrun by deer, having had it in the past and not this winter. I am also really reluctant to be putting bylaws on the deck that are somewhere between exceedingly hard and impossible to enforce. In fact, one of the things I'm thinking about for next term, should I be here, is going through the bylaws and eliminating all of the bylaws that are on the books that we can't or don't do a job of enforcement, to try and make it simpler so that people actually really do understand what we tolerate and what we don't. So putting a bylaw on for this, I think, is exceedingly complicated. I'll be very interested in seeing how we think as a corporation we might be able to help, but I think we're going to have to get other people involved, like the ministry, and maybe do a little bit of a wild game dinner.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask Councillor Roberts first, and then okay, Councillor Roberts, and then CAO Pink.
Thank you, thank you. Last evening on the way home, I counted within half a kilometer, 25 deer off a highway on 18. I have hit deer, which cost $7,500 to repair my car and could have killed us. I know there's other people in this room that have hit deer. We have a significant problem that we got to find a solution to. I would like, if we're going to do a report, for what the Ministry of Natural Resources recommend over and above having as a bylaw that we find people that we can sort of slow these deer down. What are the other options other than here's your education, you shouldn't do it. Finally, we'll all recall that we have a priority list for bylaws. And we had the one that's, the fireworks ban, which we are concerned. And so staff, if I was staff, I'd be asking, well, which one you want where do you want this on the priority list? So, that's, we've asked them to do a lot of work. Those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Pink.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Roberts took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, if the direction is to prepare a resolution to bring back a report, staff's happy to do that, and we'll try to do that in relatively short order. But I think the committee needs to be mindful. Again, there's a priority list just spoken to. We're currently reviewing the noise bylaw, getting a lot of input and discussion and debate on that. I've heard fireworks bylaw, burning bylaw. I can't recall the exact list order off the top of my head, but I think council or staff would seek, should the direction of that report be to craft a bylaw, staff will be seeking some direction as to where in the priority scale this needs to be placed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, Councillor Edwards, and then I think we'll look to a couple of the members who have suggested a report to come back to put forward a motion, a resolution. It's printing.
Thank you.
Councillor Kent?
I think that that we probably need to, and maybe here is a place where we do enlist district. This is not given that this really is a municipal natural resources problem, is this not something that affects the entire district? And I mean, from my experience and knowledge of this out west, in other locations in the US, the kinds of things that are considered to tame deer populations include putting wolves into the population, increasing the coyote. There's a whole process that goes along with this, whereas I think it would be helpful to stop feeding, but it's not going to make them go away. So I'm wondering, I guess my question is, do we bring this up in a broader forum as something that needs to be dealt with by district and interaction with the Ministry of Natural Resources? Because the problem's big.
Don't know if anybody from district can respond to that.
I'm Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, I think we're going to have our plate full trying to figure out how to solve this problem in the township. I think the other parts of the district, I'm going to guess, have less of a problem because they're more urban. They have settlements in Huntsville, Bracebridge, and Gravenhurst, and I'm certainly don't have as big a problem as we do here locally.
So I do feel like the resolution, I will read this in a minute. I want to make sure that Councillor Edwards gets a chance to speak. And then I'm going to read a resolution that hopefully will give a path forward here.
I would support a study into this, but you know, it's not just Windermere, it's all, and I've been driving around Windermere lately and I count, the most I've ever counted is 20. In fact, yesterday I had 10 on my property and I do not feed deer, but they do eat our gardens, and that as long as I have a garden, there's going to be deer and that. So if we have to look at this, we should be looking at it township wise even, because the deer doesn't know where the boundary is. But we should do something about it, definitely. From the Windermere Fire Hall to Brackenridge Road, which is basically 2 kilometers, I counted 30 deer, and they're not in Windermere as such. So it's not just Windermere, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But if people keep putting the hostas and everything else like that, we just stop because you just can't keep them. So we just try and get something else. Yes, my trees have been eaten so far up off the ground, but like I say, they were here first. But but if we could get something to discourage people and that, if it has to be a bylaw, so be it. And that, and then bring it through. But I'd like to see at least a study on it to see what other areas are doing. Thank you.
Okay, let me read the resolution that has been drafted. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Kent. Whereas committee received a presentation from Dean Bender and Susan Kinsella on behalf of Village of Windermere constituents regarding the deer population in the village due to feeding. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to bring back a report on potential options to address the concerns related to the deer population, including but not limited to the development of a bylaw restricting the feeding of wildlife within the township. Yes. Councillor Roberts, did you have a question?
And I heard you specifically mention just deer in the bylaw?
It says be directed to bring back a report on potential options to address the concerns related to the deer population, including but not limited to the development of a bylaw restricting the feeding of wildlife within the township. So are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, staff, for helping us navigate next steps on that one. Now going to move to the next one. There was a draft. Yes, a draft, if you could.
So I'd like to make a suggestion about the next item, the attendance in Zoom. The reason I supported having this was to have a wholesome discussion around the issue of attendance, non-attendance, all in-person, hybrid. I frankly don't, I mean, it's 12:15. We've got a full council piece after. I don't think we're going to do this particular piece justice today. And my view would be, if we could, to defer it, because I think there's lots of things in the piece around how we conduct our meetings. And I don't see that there's we're not going to do anything this term, so we're setting it up for next term, and maybe if we allocate a little bit more time to it next month, that we can actually have a thoughtful conversation around do we encourage hybrid meetings, or are we just all in person, or are we just all hybrid, or whatever it may be. I just think it's too complex to have a meaningful discussion in.
I've heard of a comment. I was about to say we're going to open it up to the discussion and allow Councillor Nishikawa to speak to it initially. I think there was some thought around the timing of why this is on today's agenda, but I think Director Esposito could help us as far as next steps or thoughts on how to handle that.
Thank you. And through you, when we did receive the request to bring it forward from Councillor Nishikawa, I did suggest that we could put it on this agenda and then have the bylaw amendment go directly to council next month. The reason being that nominations for elections open for the next term on May 1st. So should somebody be filing their nomination papers and incurring costs at that time, in order to conduct, a fair election for everybody and fair for all candidates, there was a bit of concern on my part in changing what might happen to those candidates or how they could participate potentially in the next term of council, should this not pass until June or July. So the biggest concern was somebody filing their paperwork, understanding what the parameters are at this time, and then changing after they've incurred costs through their campaign. So in terms of, it's completely up to committee. You can absolutely, it's your prerogative to certainly postpone the matter, but that was where the timing came out of this, was just a concern because nominations do open in just a couple of weeks.
So with that, I would like to give Councillor Nishikawa an opportunity to at least open up the item that was on the agenda. And then I think I've already seen Councillor Zavitz has his hand up, and then we can continue.
Thank you. Well, essentially, Crystal had basically said what I was concerned about. I have experienced since COVID a real discomfort with how this council operates through Zoom. And also sitting on a district council where everyone is present and all chairs filled, more or less. Lots of stuff happens in the coffee room, lots of conversations and that type of thing. So that's generally where I wanted to go. I'm not sure that I'm feeling comfortable at this moment to getting into full details when in fact we are not going to address this, as I've heard from.
So I think there's a
sorry, I'm being like interrupted and I'm not clear that I was going to discuss what.
So there's a resolution.
No, but Director Burry had brought some things forward and I was basically reacting to what he was saying and being respectful that I got that he was asking for us not to go into the next hour of our lunchtime or staff's lunchtime, quite frankly.
So I think I'm going to just take a pause for a moment. That currently under new business, we have a motion that has been presented by Councillor Nishikawa and Councillor Burry that we've all had a chance to read, that there's a bit of a timing opportunity here that has been pointed out by our clerk, that there is actually a sense of importance to us having a conversation about this item today. Even in the resolution, it indicates going to council next month, which is not always the case. Because any person, whether it's a person sitting around this table today or somebody who maybe is watching and is contemplating putting their hat into next term of council and to the election, this could be a meaningful piece of information. So the opportunity for us to delay this discussion, I think, is somewhat limited if we want to have any kind of impact on the next term of council. So I think the time, none of us like it that we're at 12:30. We spent quite a bit of time talking about some other issues today, but I think it's on the agenda today. And I think other committee members have now had time to think about that and probably also want to participate in the discussion. They've done their homework as well. So I think what I would like to suggest is that we have the conversation. People are prepared for it today, and I think there's a timing. So with that said, I think Councillor Zavitz is up first, and then if others would like to make a comment, please do. Councillor Kent, I see your hand up.
Thank you, and through you, and here to that, I would certainly agree with all of your words. This is a great time to talk about it because I think, as the clerk has indicated, there is a certain timing pressure. Someone brought this forward. We're here to discuss it, and I'm happy to do that. I mean, it's difficult to put into words how we could possibly be alienating 66% of our taxpaying base who are seasonal. I've heard the word used many times today. Seasonal residents can't participate at council, and I would think we'd want them to. If they can't get from their property to their property, are they then forced to be at all the meetings and stay at a place and spend $200 a night? Point being is that, and a bit lengthy here, I know, but we've already, some of that stuff's been brought forward over this term of council, and it's been put aside. I think that we might have moved on something for next term of council where chair may be getting some sort of compensation. I'm not sure, but I know that was a flavor. So the point of the matter is, if we're going to disenfranchise 66%, and that's a mild number, as we would all know, of the people who aren't even here, who don't, have a residence that they can use 12 months of the year. I just think this is a fairly discriminatory, just because the district, we sit here and talk about the district and we don't even like a lot of what the district does in an interface with us. And yet we're going to subscribe to the district's theory that everybody's got to be in their seat. I would suggest, you heard the word missed many times, but you missed a meeting and you're on Zoom. That is so not true, just for optics. I do all my research the same as anybody else should do. And when I'm on Zoom, I'm here. I'm in this room, right? So are all the delegates and so are the other people. Not trying to be defensive, but the point of the matter is, I see no reason in the policy the way it's written right now. If you want to tighten it up, I'm happy to do that. I would have no problem with this, I suppose, but I think we all need to be heard.
Yeah.
Thank
Let
you.
me, I didn't want to interrupt you. I am going to read the resolution just so that allows our conversation. Okay. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that the clerk be directed to prepare and place on the May council agenda an amendment to bylaw 2023-089, procedural bylaw, to add the following under section 2.19, electronic meetings. The maximum number of meetings that a member can electronically participate in a calendar year are 3 council meetings and 3 committee meetings where a member has been appointed as a committee member, and that the bylaw amendment take force and effective November 15th, 2026. So I now have Councillor Kent and then Mayor Kelly and then Councillor Roseworth.
Thank you. I'll be short and sweet on this. I've expressed my views on this before. And when I think it came up when we had a discussion about compensation and other items related to that. And I said, if we're going to make changes, we need to do it sooner rather than later so that people know now we're being squished at the tail end. I believe that this would be discriminatory. I think we have 70% of our base are people who do not live full-time in the community. It is winter and dangerous to travel 4 to 5 months a year, and it fringes on either side. The modern world has moved on. I can't tell you in any business, any board I'm on, any interaction I have in the community, Zoom is, we have Zoom meetings for new people coming into colleges. We have Zoom meetings for regular boards all over the place. This is the way the world has moved. And I think hybrid formats are not going anywhere. To go backwards to a point where we force everybody, as Glenn said, Mr. Zavitz said, in their chair is just not in line with the kind of council that I believe we've become, that using technology, looking for economic opportunities that reduce costs, environmental things that reduce costs. I think this is going backwards rather than forward. And I think the fact that it's discriminatory against a big chunk of our population and community is inappropriate at this time. If we decide, and this was where a more fundamental discussion is worth having, that we can do things better by doing things differently in order to make Zoom work better for the community, then I think we need to have a conversation about that. Such as, well, maybe we decide that 3 meetings a year, we all go to Zoom. And all people are on the same footing if we think that's the problem. So there's lots of things to be discussed, including if you want people to be there all in person. I think we have to discuss, despite the ratepayers having a strong opinion on this subject, facilitating the ease of travel for people who have to come in from, locations that are not convenient. Anyway, I've said it before, I've said it again. I think this is the wrong time, and I think it's going backwards, and it's discriminatory. Anyway, happy to discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, this will be short and sweet. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm not going to waste my time with them or yours until somebody can answer me one question. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And it better not be because district council does it, and it better not be because we have little meetings in the coffee shop. I don't know what the problem is, and there's a lot to talk about, but let's focus it on the problem and we'll solve it.
I feel like that could have been a rhetorical question because I'm not seeing anybody put up their hand. So I will go to Councillor Bosenworth, Councillor Roberts, and then back to Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. I will be brief. I don't think we should be doing this. We have a very inclusionary policy now, and we should stick to it. We have high quality meetings that are not, it's not disruptive having people on Zoom. Maybe it's a little bit, but we always have lots of constituents on Zoom too, and they tend to be much more disruptive because they don't know how to use they have trouble with the technology. So there's no problem. We should, and we will create a problem if we have this policy.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did give this a lot of thought. First of all, so no way, and then I did give it a lot of thought, and I'm thinking that we should take the time to review how committee and council communicate with each other in this forum. I talk about the expected behavior of committee members and council, and clearly set standards, such as we don't want someone who's, well, I would not want someone who's all they do is attend by Zoom. So, but I don't think today is the time. We have had evidence recently where we had a solution and we said, let's implement that solution, only then to take sober second thought, saying it wasn't the right thing to do. So I think we got to start off by clearly understanding and defining what all the issues are, and then plot a plan forward. And 6 weeks of time, it won't get, we will do something wrong, and we'll regret it. So I support not moving forward with that kind of discussion this term.
Okay. Councillor Zavitz.
Well, thank you, and short and sweet as well, through you. I would just draw attention to the fact that the mayor himself, for convenience, has managed 144 ward meetings over this term of council. And again, I use the word convenience. It just makes sense to what Councillor Kent has said for a whole lot of reasons. It just makes good business sense. So, communicatively, I don't see what, this is asking a question that no one, or answering a question that no one asked. I mean, the point of the matter is, if effectiveness is the piece that we're trying to get to here, and some council members are not effective or not going to be if they aren't here for this duration, then I think it needs to be said. And I don't hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bosenworth.
I believe there's a process where council or committee members can call for the vote. Am I correct on that?
I was about to do that.
Okay.
That just to help us seeing the time. Oh, I didn't know that there's another hand up. No, Councillor Nishikawa. So
No, yeah, exactly.
Councillor Nishikawa, just give me a chance. I'm trying to manage right now this discussion, and I didn't see your hand up. So I would like to offer, you are the person who is the architect, and I was going to come back, and then we'll call the vote after.
Thank you, through you. So I'm putting my taxpayer, like I'm a taxpayer. I've made the effort to show up in this chamber, and we've all seen this chamber full of people. Some of us have seen this chamber full of people. As a taxpayer, I don't want to pay a councillor money to not show up for 6 months of the year to the municipality, and understand the challenges that are going on a daily basis, like for instance, how many deer did you hit today, sort of thing. Those kinds of real conversations happen around this table. If we're trying to eliminate that kind of connectiveness to the community, because that's what it feels like, that we've opened up since COVID, we've opened up an opportunity for truly council to not understand what taxpayers are living through. And if that's the way that this council is going, that's the way that this council is going. But I would just say, as a taxpayer, I would not be voting for a councillor that chose to not show up. And I am a taxpayer. And I will say that some of the heavy lifting that happens within our communities happens by one off of councils. So for instance, I might hear from an example of what happens in Milford Bay, for instance, or even what's happening through their community center. All those things come through those councillors. It's just unfortunate, whatever direction this council goes in, that we might need to be more respectful to, for instance, the lake associations or the ratepayers associations that have sent in comments, and not just, it's just not comfortable for us to deal with. So I'm really, really disappointed, because mostly what we heard from are people that are just not here.
I feel I'm coming back to Mayor Kelly's comment about what the problem is we're trying to solve, and then potentially how we're trying to solve that problem. And introduced in there was, separate from one's attendance of these formal meetings every month, there's another part to our role as a councillor, and that is our engagement within our communities, both year-round and seasonal. And as the kind of easy delineation, I guess I would call it. And so I'm just reflecting upon what you were just saying, trying to marry it up with what Mayor Kelly had introduced. Is this going to solve that second problem? People's ability to actually feel involved and engaged in understanding of the real issues of our community today. So I'm acknowledging what you're saying, and it's made me think, and I think it's important that we all consider that, and anybody who is considering to put their name in the hat for the next term of council needs to understand our audience as a whole and understand how to participate. That said, I'm just kind of, I want you to hear my thoughts as I'm trying to listen to the interest and the passion and reflecting on the other comments made here. I see two other hands up. I saw Mayor Kelly, and I do see you, Councillor Kent, as well. So I do want to give a chance to speak. And then maybe we'll see if I can call the question, as per Councillor Boseworth a minute ago.
Thank you. And through you, there's two separate pieces. The piece of sitting around this table and making a decision in 3 hours once a month, and the engagement with the community. If there's a challenge dealing with somebody on Zoom, that's the chair's problem. That needs to be resolved and managed through chairing. And maybe we need to be more abrupt. Maybe we need to be more strict. I actually have occasionally seen it, but I see it around this table too. We all get out of sorts and out of line and become unpredictable, maybe because we're all in one small confined space. I don't know. The other part of it, the engagement, we don't need a bylaw to enforce that. It's in the hands of the voter. You just don't get reelected. If they don't feel you're adequately there to represent their interests, you won't be welcome back. And no bylaw can say you got to be here, 4 months of every year or whatever, 8 months of every year, but you don't have to leave your house if you choose not to. You don't have to. We can't legislate engagement. We can't manage how much time you spent listening. So I think that we've got what we need. I think, as Councillor Kent said, there are far bigger and far more complicated matters being dealt with as we speak by Zoom exclusively or in hybrid format all over the world. And it's a big onerous job for a chair to kind of manage and keep track. But it's not a whole lot different than dealing with people in the room. And ultimately, there's, about 8 months from now, I suspect there'll be some people running who find out that their community didn't think they were adequately engaged. They have the ultimate hammer. They can make that decision and vote you out.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I would just make one more comment, which is we have a council that has 10 people on it. Everybody doesn't have to be the same. You want diversity. You want different opinions. You want different parts of the community represented. If everybody in the community lived in the township on a permanent basis, okay, you would have a very one-sided perspective on the viewpoints of the balance of the community. So I don't have to be the same as Mayor Kelly, who lives 2 minutes from the township office, or Councillor Nishikawa, who lives in Bala area. Okay, there are people, tons of people like me, and I'm representing them as well as the rest of the community. So you want to have a diverse council that has different perspectives, different needs, and different locale. And if you don't have that, I think you're not doing a service to the broad community. So anything that discriminates on that basis is not, in my opinion, a favorable or a thing that makes the council stronger and better.
Okay, thank you. I have read the resolution, and so would anybody like me to reread the resolution? Okay. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that the clerk be directed to prepare and place on the May Council agenda an amendment to bylaw 2023-089 procedural bylaw to add the following under section 2.19 electronic meetings. The maximum number of meetings that a member can electronically participate in a calendar year are 3 council meetings and 3 committee meetings where a member has been appointed as a committee member. And that the bylaw amendment take force and effective November 15th, 2026. So I will now call all those in favor. I've already called the question because this is the second time I read it, and that we've had a very robust discussion. So the question, I've called the question. All those in favor. Okay. All those opposed. Thank you. So that is defeated. I do appreciate people following the process and bringing forward a resolution actually worked the way it's supposed to. And that's Councillor Burry, to your comments earlier. I think as evidence, it gave everybody else around the table some time to think about thoughts that were on certain councillors' minds. And it gave us all a chance to think about it in advance and start shaping our own thoughts and opinions. So thank you for following that.
So Madam Chair, to the point, that is why I supported it and voted against it. Yeah. I supported it so that we would have a healthy dialogue, because that's what's sometimes missing from our table.
So I acknowledge and wanted to thank both of you for bringing it forward in the way that you did. The next item is 12C. I'm not quite sure who's actually, I forgot to ask who's leading this discussion. Or is it just simply the letter that that's just for information? Nobody's making a comment? Okay, CAO Pink or Mayor Kelly?
Thank you. I don't have much to add. I just suggested that this be placed on the agenda. I know it is a district matter, but I'm sure councillors or committee members are familiar with it. Fairly substantial legislation being proposed, and I thought this would be an opportunity should committee members have any questions. Staff can do our best to try to answer, or should you wish to discuss the matter, placing it on the agenda will give you the opportunity to do so. So I'm pleased to leave it at that.
Okay. Mayor Kelly, did you want to add comment?
I do, and thank you very much. Through you. I would just point out that on next Monday's district council agenda, there is a resolution that is being brought to district, which proposes amendments to the recommendation or the requirement that's being advanced by the province. And I think it's specifically to retain the right to elect a district chair. It doesn't speak, to my knowledge, it's a very, very long resolution, but it doesn't speak, I don't think, to the issue of strong chair powers. I think remain a possibility. But I think the request is of the province that they come back and agree that at least within the district of Muskoka, district municipality of Muskoka, we'll have the right to elect our own chair of the district council. So watch for that. And I won't be surprised if that gets referred back to the lower tiers for endorsement.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa and then Councillor Bosemore.
Thank you. Through you to, I'm gonna, although I think I just heard the answer maybe, but I understood that one municipality has passed a bylaw. I believe it's Bracebridge, what I was told. But I'm just wondering if we would just copy whatever they are drafting to be in unison, more or less.
Perhaps, I think I just heard from Mayor Kelly that if something is being discussed at the district, that it may come back to us as a lower tier to endorse. Is that a possibility or?
That's a possibility. I think that's going to be a request on Monday, is that it be sent to all clerks in all the lower tiers. I believe there was a resolution that was proposed. I believe it was also Bracebridge, but I think after a kind of a joint communication with the chair and the mayors, the decision was to present one uniform document. So I'm not sure that it was submitted.
Okay. I think that answers that question. And it was Councillor Bosemore, sir.
Yeah, I've just had a question. I think I read in here, and when I read it, I wasn't clear, but it also is requiring some degree of review by municipalities of their the makeup of their composition of their. Was there that in there? And perhaps CEO Pink or Madam Clerk could figure it out for me.
Okay, there's three of you. Look, everybody's pointing fingers at each other. Who would like to speak? CAO Pink?
Thank you. The clerk may wish to expand on this, but my understanding is, yes, part of the draft bill by the province, I think does look at the composition of Niagara Region and Simcoe County. Upper tier municipalities, I think under the Municipal Act, have to do a composition review every second term. I believe the district is up for that in the next term. But there's no changes in the draft bill, I believe, to the district of Muskoka in that regard. That's correct.
Okay, so Mayor Kelly?
Just thank you, and through you, just a quick add to that. There is, I believe, a requirement for ongoing accountability to meeting the goals for the Build Better Homes Faster, or whatever the name of the legislation is. I think there's a requirement that in our case, the district come back to the Minister of Housing or Municipal Affairs and with a regular quarterly update or semi-annual update.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, thank you very much for bringing that forward. It'll be interesting to watch. District updates and or questions. I will look to, I'm opening up to the entire group here. Okay, seeing none. Community events. Do we have anything upcoming that people would like to share? Seeing none. Okay. I think we have a resolution, and perhaps Mayor Kelly, you can just confirm, when would you like council meeting to start today? At 2? Okay, so that gives. I
got some problem.
Okay, so 2 o'clock. We will be resuming, for anybody who is watching online, we will be resuming on council meeting at 2 o'clock today. I will read our final resolution for today. Moved by Councillor Bosemore, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 12:46 p.m. And the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on Wednesday, May 13th, 2026 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the Council Chambers Municipal Office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful lunch. Thanks for great discussions today and everybody trying to stay disciplined. I appreciate it.